Empire's Collapse, an Insomnia Audiobooks original. Chapter 1, The Gathering Storm. As the sun rises over the city, the morning light filters through the opulent stained glass windows of the Carrington mansion. It dances over the antique furniture and well-treaded Persian rugs, each a testament to the family's long and storied history. The mansion stands tall, a silent sentinel amidst the bustling city, a vestige of old money and timeless tradition. Within its stone walls, the Carringtons begin their day. Samantha Carrington, the family matriarch, emerges from her room in a rustle of silk and a cloud of expensive perfume. She's always been a woman of elegance and grace, each of her movements painting a picture of sophistication. "Good morning, Evelyn." She greets her housekeeper, her voice as smooth as the coffee that the latter serves her. "Good morning, ma'am. You have your board meeting at 10, the charity gala planning at 2, and dinner with Senator Gray at 7, Evelyn informs her, going through the day's schedule. Samantha nods, making a mental note of her appointments, but her mind is elsewhere. She worries about her son, Alex. On the other side of the mansion, Alex Carrington emerges from his study, a room filled with old books and darker secrets. His usually bright blue eyes are clouded with concern, the morning paper clenched tightly in his hand. He glances at the headline, the accusations against his family business staring back at him in bold black letters. This is just another smear campaign, a bump in the road, he mutters to himself. But his worry bleeds into the room. A knock on the door breaks his trance. "Come in," he calls out, and his younger sister Laura steps in. She is the youngest Carrington and the most innocent, her sunny disposition a stark contrast to the seriousness of the situation. "Alex, you look terrible," Laura observes, worry etching lines on her youthful face. "You've been holed up in here since yesterday. You need to eat something." "I can't afford to waste time, Laura," Alex replies, his tone carrying a finality that discourages further arguments. But the concern in his sister's eyes doesn't wane. She places a comforting hand on his arm, silently communicating her support. Back in the city, Thomas Hill, a long-standing rival of the Carringtons, reads the same newspaper, but his reaction is vastly different. A satisfied smirk plays on his lips as he leans back in his office chair. The view from his glass-paneled office offers a panoramic sight of the city he wishes to control. "Things are falling into place," he murmurs to himself, drumming his fingers on the expensive oak table. His secretary, Jessica, enters, casting him a knowing glance. "Yes, they are, Mr. Hill," she says, a hint of admiration in her voice. "But we shouldn't underestimate the Carringtons. They're known to bounce back." Meanwhile, Samantha, unaware of the imminent storm, stares out of her window, her thoughts clouded. The city she loves so much seems to be on the brink of a drastic change, and her family stands at the epicenter of it all. Little does she know her world is about to change forever. The storm is coming, and it's headed straight for the Carringtons. Chapter 2. Behind closed doors. Alex retreats into the cavernous library after his conversation with Laura. The room's grandeur lost on him as he drowns in his worries. High shelves filled with leather-bound books line the walls, their spines cracked with age and wisdom. The soft glow of a solitary desk lamp illuminates the papers strewn across the mahogany desk, an island of light in an ocean of uncertainty. He threads his fingers through his hair, a sense of helplessness enveloping him as he reads through the company's financial reports. There's no doubt about it. The family business is sinking, fast. Suddenly, the library doors swing open, and his father, William Carrington, strides into the room. A towering figure, William is an embodiment of power and control. His gray eyes, a mirror of Alex's, bear the weight of decades of decision-making. The elder Carrington's firm voice echoes in the room. "Alex, we need to talk." "Dad, have you seen this?" Alex asks, holding up the damning newspaper article. "They're tearing us apart in the press." William takes a moment to survey the chaos on the desk, his expression hardening. "I've seen it, but we can't allow this to distract us. We've weathered worse, son." Samantha stands outside the closed library doors, drawn by the unmistakable tones of her husband and son. Pressing her ear against the cool wood, she listens in, her heart pounding. The conversation within confirms her worst fears. Their empire is crumbling, and her family is in danger. She steps away, wrapping her arms around herself, the gravity of the situation making her feel unusually cold. Outside the mansion, the city continues to bustle, oblivious to the drama unfolding within. Reporters from the city's leading news outlets scramble to gather information, their cameras flashing and pens scribbling. Whispers of the Carringtons' downfall circulate like wildfire, fueling the media frenzy. And at the heart of this chaos is one man, Robert Klein, a seasoned journalist with a nose for scandal. Robert walks into his office, a hive of activity. He glances at his team, busy fielding calls and typing up articles. Spotting his assistant, Marcy, he calls her over. "Marcy, what's the latest on the Carrington situation?" "They're keeping tight-lipped, Robert," Marcy responds, scrolling through her notes. "But rumors are rife about financial instability, and I've heard whispers about a major fallout within the family." Back in the Carrington mansion, Laura, unable to ignore the turmoil, finds herself knocking on the library doors. When she enters, the tension in the room is palpable. Her brother and father stand over the desk, a battlefield of documents and despair. "Dad, Alex, we need to stick together," Laura pleads, trying to mediate the tension. "We can handle this, just like we always have." The Carringtons, despite their many differences, share one common trait: resilience. As the storm rages on, they huddle together, bracing themselves for the impact. They know that the only way to weather this storm is together, and so they prepare for the fight of their lives, armed with nothing but their unwavering determination and an unbreakable bond of family. Chapter 3. The Siege. The morning sun casts long shadows on the Carrington mansion, the harsh reality of their situation making the usually vibrant estate seem dull and listless. Alex, despite a sleepless night, appears fresh and determined as he steps out of his luxurious room. His eyes are hard, mirroring the resolve he feels. He strides down the grand staircase, his mind running through possible strategies to salvage the business. Every step he takes reverberates through the empty hall, a staccato reminder of the pressure he carries. Arriving in the library, he's surprised to find his father already there, staring at the array of monitors displaying the plummeting stock prices of their company. The elder Carrington looks weary, lines of worry etched deeply into his face. He turns to Alex, his gaze piercing. "We need to take decisive action, Alex. The sharks smell blood." "Dad, we've been through tough times," Alex responds, clenching his fists at his side. "We can't let panic set our course. I have a plan." Meanwhile, Samantha busies herself in the vast Carrington kitchen, a haven where she finds solace from the storm brewing within her family. The sound of a knife rhythmically chopping vegetables is strangely therapeutic. It provides a semblance of normalcy amidst the tumult. In the otherwise quiet kitchen, the sound of her phone ringing is as jarring as a thunderclap. She hesitates for a moment before answering, knowing that the call would bring more bad news. "Samantha, it's Patricia." The voice on the other end starts, her tone grim. "The investors are getting nervous. They've called for an emergency meeting." Outside, Robert Klein, the relentless journalist, has set up camp opposite the Carrington mansion. He squints at the estate, his eyes scanning for any signs of activity. Beside him, Marcy is tapping away on her laptop, the rapid-fire click-clack of keys echoing in the quiet morning. Robert pulls out his phone, scrolling through the flood of messages from sources keen to spill the beans on the Carrington crisis. "Marcy, we need to dig deeper," Robert states, his fingers drumming on the desk. "This is bigger than just the Carringtons. I smell corruption at a much higher level." Back at the mansion, Laura walks into the library, her steps hesitant. She's always felt like an outsider in the company's affairs, more interested in her humanitarian projects than the cutthroat world of business. But she knows that she can't stay on the sidelines anymore. The conversation that ensues among the Carringtons is intense, each one contributing ideas, each one desperate to find a solution. "We need to show strength," Laura argues, surprising both her father and brother with her conviction. "That's what the public and our investors need to see. We have to face this head on." Despite the weight of their situation, the Carringtons draw strength from each other. This crisis, as catastrophic as it may be, has brought them closer. They stand united, armed with their collective wisdom and an unyielding will to survive. As the day progresses, the battle for their legacy becomes all the more intense, and they brace themselves for what's to come. Chapter 4. tightening the noose. As the morning slips into afternoon, the stress within the Carrington mansion escalates. The tension is palpable, a heavy blanket that shrouds everyone within its grand walls. It's as if time is moving differently within the estate, each second drawing out into an eternity. Alex, Samantha, and Laura continue their hurried discussions, poring over stacks of documents, emails, and financial reports. At times, their arguments become heated, the stress of their situation straining their usually cordial relationships. The library has transformed into a war room, papers strewn about and screens flickering with an endless stream of data. Alex hunches over his laptop, eyes scanning lines of numbers and charts. His fingers fly over the keyboard, typing responses to emails, seeking help from allies, and drafting strategies to calm investors. Samantha, usually so composed, is visibly on edge. Her hands worry a pen, clicking it in a continuous rhythm that's become the erratic heartbeat of their predicament. "It's not as bad as it seems," Alex finally says, attempting to lighten the mood. His voice echoes in the room, but his reassurances do little to lift the tension. "We've weathered worse storms. I hope your optimism is justified," Samantha replies, her voice barely above a whisper. The gravity of their situation weighs heavily on her. "But hope isn't a strategy, Alex." Just then, Laura strides into the room, her face illuminated by determination. She's been in her room, on a flurry of calls with their legal team and PR firm. Despite her initial reluctance to involve herself in the family business, she's now neck-deep in the crisis. "Our PR team has a plan," Laura announces, her words cutting through the stifling silence of the room. "They're proposing a public statement, coupled with a press conference. It's bold, but it might just work." Simultaneously, at Robert Klein's makeshift newsroom, the story of the Carrington fall is taking shape. The journalist pores over his notes, his brow furrowed in concentration. His fingers fly over the keyboard, and the words appear on the screen as if he's painting the Carringtons' downfall with each keystroke. His phone buzzes incessantly with updates, news alerts, and anonymous tips painting a grim picture of the Carrington Empire's prospects. "Marcy, look at this," Robert exclaims, his gaze fixed on his screen. "We have a major scoop here. The Carrington stock is plummeting." This is the beginning of their end. The day progresses, and the atmosphere around the Carrington mansion tightens like a noose. Every conversation, every phone call, every email is a fight to salvage what remains of their legacy. However, despite the relentless pressure, a newfound determination sparks within the Carringtons. This crisis is testing their mettle, pushing them to their limits. But they're not backing down. The Carringtons are ready to fight, to protect their legacy, and to weather the storm, no matter how devastating it might be. Chapter 5. The Eye of the Storm. In the heart of the city, under the harsh glow of fluorescent lights, the Klein newsroom buzzes with frenzied activity. Papers are strewn about, and the sounds of furious typing and hurried phone conversations fill the air. Robert Klein is at the center of this whirlwind, his eyes glinting with a potent mixture of excitement and determination. Beside him, Marcy works diligently, her fingers flitting over the keyboard, compiling information, analyzing data, and organizing their groundbreaking story. "Marcy!" Robert calls out, his voice cutting through the noise. He waves a printout in his hand like a victorious flag. "Look at this! Our insider just sent new information. It seems like the Carringtons were involved in more than just financial mismanagement." Marcy rolls her eyes, but smiles at Robert's exuberance. "You've been waiting for this moment for years, haven't you, Robert?" she says, not expecting an answer. Their years-long investigation into the Carringtons' activities is finally bearing fruit, and the taste of success is sweet. Meanwhile, within the Carrington mansion, a storm of a different kind is brewing. The grand estate, usually filled with the laughter and chatter of social events, is eerily quiet. Only the low hum of hushed conversations and the clatter of keystrokes break the silence. The air is thick with tension, every person within these walls aware of the storm outside, ready to ravage their legacy. In the library, the Carringtons' war room, Samantha rubs her temples, her eyes bloodshot from hours of reading financial reports. Across from her, Alex works tirelessly, poring over legal documents, desperate to find a loophole that could save them. Laura, their reluctant warrior, continues to field calls from their lawyers, her voice steady despite the turmoil raging within her. "We've got to stay united," Alex insists, his voice strained but resolute. "Remember, We're Carringtons. We've always survived. Samantha looks at Alex, her brother's words pulling her out of her thoughts. Surviving isn't enough, Alex, she says, her voice quiet but strong. We need to come out of this stronger. As the sun begins to set, the Carrington mansion's imposing silhouette casts long shadows. The storm that's been gathering pace is now upon them. The pressure is almost unbearable, yet a strange calm settles over the family. It's the calm at the eye of the storm, a moment of respite before the chaos reignites. The Carringtons know this is merely the beginning. The storm outside rages on, but within the mansion's thick walls, they are preparing to weather it together. As the night grows darker, their determination grows stronger. The Carringtons will fight for their legacy until the very end. Chapter 6. A Family at War. The following morning, Robert Klein's exposé hits the stands, its headline blaring like a thunderclap. People all over the city are grabbing copies, their faces contorted in a myriad of expressions. Shock, intrigue, even a little delight. Coffee shops, office spaces, park benches. Wherever you look, you'll find people engrossed in the Klein's sensational revelation. The mighty Carringtons, untouchable and revered, are under scrutiny, their meticulously built reputation crumbling under the weight of their alleged deeds. Inside the Klein newsroom, Robert and Marcy watch the public reaction unfold, a satisfying sense of achievement spreading between them. Robert leans back in his chair, a proud smile playing on his lips. "We did it, Marcy," he says, his voice echoing the triumph of their accomplishment. "We shed light on the truth. The Carringtons won't be able to hide any longer." "You're right," Marcy agrees, although her face is more contemplative than jubilant. "But this is just the beginning, Robert. The Carringtons won't go down without a fight." Across town, within the confines of the Carrington mansion, a war council is in session. The grandeur of the opulent dining room feels suffocating now, the richly decorated walls closing in. The headline of Klein's paper lies at the center of the long mahogany table, a constant mocking reminder of their newfound infamy. Samantha, Alex, and Laura sit at the head of the table, their faces grim, their minds racing with strategies and counterattacks. Klein's report is thorough, Laura admits, her hands clenched around the paper. "It won't be easy to dismiss this, but we must." Alex interjects, the steel in his voice belying the fear in his eyes. "We can't let these allegations tarnish the Carrington name. We have to control the narrative. It's us against the world now." Samantha silently contemplates her siblings' words, her gaze unfocused. The chandelier above them casts a cold, harsh light over the room, highlighting the seriousness of their situation. Suddenly she straightens, a new fire igniting in her eyes. "We've faced trials before," she says, her voice steady and sure. "We can handle this. We are the Carringtons after all. We will not be brought down by a news article." A determined silence settles over the room, broken only by the ticking of the antique clock on the mantel. Samantha's words hang heavy in the air, a declaration of war against their accusers. It's the beginning of a battle, one that will test the mettle of the Carrington family. But they are united, and in their unity lies their strength. They will fight tooth and nail to preserve their legacy. As the war begins, the Carringtons stand strong, ready to face whatever lies ahead. Chapter 7. Strategies and Deceptions. An air of grave determination suffuses the Carrington mansion the following week. Even the house staff walk on tiptoes, their eyes wide and wary, the undercurrent of tension palpable. Every corner of the mansion whispers of a brewing storm, and despite the mansion's grandeur and history, there's a sense of fragile precariousness that was not there before. The Carringtons move with purpose, their conversations heavy with the weight of their plans, their voices echoing with unspoken fears and unwavering resolve. In the elegantly appointed study, Alex Carrington sits behind an enormous antique desk, the dark polished mahogany gleaming in the low light. Stacks of papers clutter the surface, the neat handwriting full of accusations and rebuttals. Alex's hand moves with steady precision, his pen scratching against the fine paper as he writes. His face is set, his brow furrowed, the lines around his mouth deepening with concentration. "We need to focus on discrediting Klein," Alex says, his voice stern and low. He lifts his gaze from the paper, looking up to meet Samantha's and Laura's eyes. His reputation isn't impeccable. We can use his past mistakes against him, make the public question his credibility. Laura, standing by the room's expansive window with a clear view of the sprawling Carrington estate, nods, her expression pensive. "We also need a public relations campaign," she asserts, her hands folded across her chest. "We need to show people that we are more than what Klein is making us out to be. Philanthropy, community engagements, press conferences. We need to flood the media with positivity." Samantha, seated on a plush leather sofa, her eyes glistening with determination, chimes in. "We also need to make sure our employees and business partners stand by us," she states, her fingers absently twisting a strand of her dark hair. "Loyalty is key. We can't afford any more damaging leaks or testimonies." Their discussion stretches into the night, the room growing darker as the sun dips below the horizon, the mansion's grand windows framing the dusky skyline. Plans and strategies are debated and discarded, replaced with new ones. Their words, filled with a mix of defiance and desperation, hang heavy in the air. The room echoes with the Carringtons' vow to protect their legacy at any cost. The clinking of glasses punctuates their promises, the amber liquid reflecting the fire in their eyes. Outside the mansion, the night is quiet. The lush gardens, usually a testament to the Carringtons' wealth, now seem to wait in anticipation, as if they too sense the approaching storm. The only sound is the soft rustle of leaves in the wind, whispering secrets to the moonlit night. In the grand mansion, the Carringtons continue their battle preparations, unaware that the enemy they need to worry about might not be the one they think it is. Chapter 8. Whispers in the Wind. The following days are a whirlwind of activity. The Carrington mansion functioning like the nerve center of a meticulously planned war campaign. Lawyers are constantly shuttling in and out, faces etched with determination and brows furrowed with deep contemplation. The house staff, although initially wary, gradually adapt to the palpable tension, their movements growing more and more deliberate and cautious. Conversations are hushed, words are weighted, and eyes speak volumes that lips don't dare utter. Within the mansion's hallowed walls, in a well-lit corner of the opulent library, Alex, Samantha, and Laura are huddled around an antique mahogany table. The table's surface is laden with heaps of documents, laptop screens glowing with the promise of strategic victories, and cups of half-drunk coffee getting colder by the minute. Their faces, illuminated by the soft glow of table lamps, reflect the gravity of the situation. "Isaac," Alex murmurs, running a hand through his graying hair, his eyes scanning a page filled with legalese. "He's been with us for nearly 2 decades. Do we trust him to stand by us?" Laura looks at her father, her expression thoughtful. "Isaac is loyal," she affirms, her gaze steady. "He's seen us at our best and worst, and he's never wavered." Samantha nods in agreement, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the table, echoing her conviction. "We need him now more than ever. We need people who know us, who know the Carrington name stands for more than what Klein is alleging." The discussion continues into the late hours, each sibling playing a critical role, their ideas and perspectives intertwining to form a formidable defense. Despite the heavy burden they carry, their unity and determination are an unstoppable force, a beacon of hope amid the gathering storm. A few days later, a press conference is organized on the mansion grounds under a sky-threatening rain. Journalists flock from every corner, their cameras and microphones poised, eager to capture every word. Alex stands at the podium, the bright lights accentuating the resolve etched on his face. Samantha and Laura stand behind him, their presence a testament to the family's solidarity. Alex's voice carries into the night, a strong, defiant proclamation against the accusations leveled against their family. But as the cameras flash and the questions fly, there's an undercurrent of uncertainty. Whispers echo through the crowd, questions subtly raised, suspicion surreptitiously sowed. As the conference wraps up, the Carringtons retire to their mansion, their steps heavy but their resolve unwavering, unaware of the new set of challenges waiting on the horizon. Chapter 9. The Shadows of Doubt. The following day dawns bright, the morning sun shining defiantly against the previous night's storm clouds. Birds are singing, their melodies a stark contrast to the hushed apprehension that hangs in the air like a thick, muggy fog. The mansion staff go about their daily chores, the rhythm of their work punctuated by hushed conversations and cautious glances. The mansion, once a symbol of opulence and power, now feels more like a fortress under siege, its occupants preparing for an inevitable onslaught. In the main dining room, a lavish breakfast has been prepared. Freshly baked pastries, platters of fruit, hot coffee, and eggs cooked to perfection adorn the long oak dining table. The room, usually abuzz with light-hearted conversation, is enveloped in a heavy silence. Alex, Samantha, and Laura are present, their plates untouched, their minds occupied with thoughts far removed from the inviting spread before them. "Did you see Klein's statement?" Samantha asks, breaking the silence. She picks up a newspaper from the pile in the center of the table. The headline is bold and scathing. She reads out loud, her voice a whisper against the deafening silence. "Carrington Empire crumbling. The fall of a dynasty." Alex responds with a hardened look, his gaze steady on Samantha. "They are vultures, picking at the bones," he replies with clear disdain, folding his arms across his chest. "We've faced adversity before. We'll do it again." Laura nods, her face pale but determined. She reaches out, placing her hand on top of Samantha's, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "We're in this together. We're not letting Klein or anyone else bring us down," she insists, her words resounding in the quiet room. Outside, the garden is still recovering from the recent storm, its beauty marred by broken branches and strewn leaves. Isaac, the loyal Carrington employee, walks along the damaged paths, his mind grappling with his own storm. His loyalty to the family is unwavering, but the swirling rumors and insinuations have started to plant seeds of doubt. His conversation with a fellow staff member echoes in his mind. "They say the Carringtons are hiding something big," the man had whispered, glancing around nervously. The statement reverberates through Isaac's thoughts, threatening to shatter his unwavering faith in the Carringtons. Chapter 10. A Unified Front. The sun has only just risen, the first rays of light piercing the morning mist as the mansion springs to life. The staff start their day, their actions measured, their conversations careful. The anxiety that had filled the air in the previous days seems to have taken a back seat, replaced by a quiet resolve that permeates the grand old building. Their loyalty towards the Carrington family is unwavering, and they're ready to stand their ground just as the mansion has stood for centuries. In the heart of the mansion, the Carringtons are convening. The large study, filled with well-worn leather chairs and centuries-old books, serves as their sanctuary. The room smells of old parchment and polished wood, a comforting scent that reminds them of the strength and resilience of their legacy. Portraits of past generations of Carringtons look on from the walls, their faces stern yet reassuring, silently observing the present generation. "Klein won't let up," Samantha states, her voice steady, though there's a faint hint of concern in her eyes. She hands over the morning newspaper to Alex, the headline screaming out another negative piece on the Carringtons. Samantha's fingers drum on the armrest of her chair, a rhythm of impatience and determination. Alex glances at the paper, his jaw set. "He's doing his best to dismantle our legacy," he says, folding the paper and tossing it onto the table with a sigh. The disappointment is evident in his voice, but it's quickly replaced by a steely determination. "But we won't let him. We've always been fighters, and this time is no different." Laura listens quietly from her corner of the room, her gaze focused on her siblings. There's a flicker of fear in her eyes, but it's overshadowed by the fire of determination. "We'll weather this storm," she assures them, her voice barely louder than a whisper but filled with conviction, "just as we have every other." As the day goes by, the Carringtons spend their time fortifying their defense. They reach out to old allies, renew connections, and leverage their vast resources. Their meetings are punctuated by serious discussions and brainstorming sessions. The trio is more united than ever, their actions a testament to their resilience. As the sun sets, they gather once more in the study. The room is filled with the remnants of their day's work, papers strewn about, empty coffee cups on the side tables. But amidst the chaos, there's a sense of accomplishment, a quiet confidence that things are moving in the right direction. "We'll get through this," Alex reiterates, looking at Samantha and Laura. "Together." And as the last light of the day fades, they continue their work, their shared determination illuminating the room brighter than any artificial light could. Their unity is their strength, their shared legacy, their motivation, and they are ready to face whatever comes their way. Chapter 11. Old Ties and New Revelations. It's a new day at the Carrington mansion. The sun is high, shining brilliantly across the sprawling grounds, casting a warm, inviting light. The birds, chirping cheerily, are darting back and forth among the lush, manicured hedges and the old towering oaks that have borne witness to generations of Carrington triumphs and trials. The mansion itself, majestic and imposing, is buzzing with an unspoken energy as the staff briskly go about their daily duties. Despite the turmoil, life at the mansion continues, a silent testament to the resilience of the people within it. In the grand dining room, the Carrington siblings are having breakfast. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingles with that of buttered toast, creating a comforting backdrop to their conversation. The room, with its high ceilings and ornate chandeliers, echoes with their voices. They speak of plans, of counterattacks, of ways to redeem their family name. There's an underlying sense of urgency, but also a newfound hope. Their camaraderie is stronger than ever, a steel shield against Klein's relentless assault. According to our sources, Klein has been meeting with several influential people, Samantha shares, a flicker of worry crossing her features as she studies the reports in front of her. Her fingers absently play with the edges of the paper, betraying her nervousness. She looks up at her siblings, her eyes determined. We need to find out what he's up to. Alex nods, thoughtfully sipping his coffee. Agreed. We have a network of our own. Let's use it, he responds, setting his cup down with a resolute clatter. The lines of his face are more pronounced in the morning light, bearing silent testimony to the stress they've been under. Yet his spirit remains undaunted. It's at this point that Laura, having been quiet till now, speaks up. There's more, she begins, her voice quiet but steady. I've been digging into Klein's past. She takes a deep breath, meeting the questioning gazes of her siblings. And I think I may have found something that could help us. The room grows silent as the siblings digest this information. A ray of morning sun streams in through the tall windows, lending an almost ethereal glow to the room. The Carringtons are known for their ability to fight against all odds, and this moment is a stark reminder of that. Their resolve is as strong as the mansion's foundations, and as unyielding as the centuries-old oaks outside. As the day progresses, they delve deeper into Klein's past, unraveling a web of questionable deals and unsavory alliances. This revelation lends a new direction to their defense, adding fuel to their determination. The mansion, with its countless rooms and grandeur, echoes with their resolve, each stone seeming to absorb and amplify their dedication. As twilight descends, they gather once more in the study, huddled over documents and blueprints, strategies and plans. The room, bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun, hums with the intensity of their discussion. As darkness falls, the Carringtons, with their unwavering unity and shared purpose, are ready to face the challenges that await them in the morning. And the mansion, their timeless fortress, stands with them, resolute and unwavering. Chapter 12. The Intricate Web of Deception. The morning sun has barely crept over the horizon when the Carrington siblings reconvene in the study. The room, which seemed so serene in the daylight, now bears an air of solemn gravity under the cold, gray light of dawn. The soft rustle of papers, the gentle tap of a keyboard, and the soft whispers of their discussion are the only sounds that break the silence. Sleep deprivation is evident on their faces, but their eyes blaze with an undying resolve. We have to be certain, Laura murmurs, scanning through a sheaf of papers spread out in front of her. Her usually neat bun is coming loose, a few strands of hair escaping and falling over her face. She brushes them away absently, her focus solely on the task at hand. One wrong move and Klein will have us cornered. We can't afford to take that risk. You're right, Alex agrees, leaning back in his chair and rubbing his temples to ward off the encroaching headache. His gaze flits over the piles of documents on the desk, his mind working furiously to connect the dots. We need concrete evidence, something irrefutable. Otherwise, it's just our word against his. A knock on the door breaks their concentration. The butler, a stoic, gray-haired man named Harris, steps into the room. He has been with the Carrington family for years. a silent witness to their trials and triumphs. "A Mr. Foster is here to see you," he informs them. His voice is calm and steady as ever. Mr. Foster, a longtime associate of the Carringtons, is ushered in. He's a short, stocky man, with a friendly demeanor that conceals a sharp mind. He greets the siblings warmly, though his eyes reveal his concern. "I've heard about the troubles you're facing," he begins, his tone apologetic. "I might have some information that could help." The room turns silent as Foster recounts his experiences with Klein. He speaks of shady dealings, unfulfilled promises, and a network of deceit that runs deeper than they could have imagined. His words confirm their suspicions and provide new leads for them to explore. "It's a complex web Klein has woven," Foster concludes, a grim expression on his face. "You need to tread carefully." After Foster's departure, the siblings sit in stunned silence. Samantha is the first to break it, her voice barely more than a whisper. "This is worse than we thought." The reality of Klein's machinations sends a cold shiver down their spines. His ruthlessness is evident in his dealings, and the extent of his influence is daunting. However, the Carringtons are not easily deterred. They gather their resolve, determined to fight back with all they've got. The day is spent strategizing, cross-referencing information, and mapping out Klein's network. The mansion, a silent spectator to their struggle, stands strong, its walls echoing their determination as they work. Into the night, one thing becomes clear. The Carringtons are ready for the battle ahead, prepared to face whatever comes their way. Their unity, their strength, and their unwavering determination radiate throughout the mansion, a beacon of hope amid the storm. Chapter 13. The Strategic Offensive. A sense of urgency has filled the Carrington mansion, the usually peaceful aura replaced with a tangible tension that keeps everyone on edge. The staff move silently, carrying out their duties with practiced efficiency, their expressions betraying their concern. They've been with the Carrington family long enough to sense the storm brewing and are united in their quiet support. Laura, Alex, and Samantha have not left the study since morning, their dedication mirroring the gravity of the situation. In the study, Laura pores over a detailed schematic of Klein's operations, each node and link meticulously marked. The intricate web of deceit, previously hidden under a veneer of legality, is now exposed. Samantha sits across from her, busy verifying their financial assets and alliances. They need to assess their resources and strengthen their positions if they are to have any chance against Klein. Meanwhile, Alex is on the phone, deep in conversation with someone on the other end. "Understood, Miles. We need all the support we can get." Alex speaks, his tone firm. He hangs up, adding another tick mark to the list of confirmed allies on his notepad. His gaze turns to his sisters, worry etching fine lines around his eyes. That was Miles. He confirmed his backing, but it's not enough. We need more support if we're going to challenge Klein. In response, Laura looks up from the sprawling blueprint of deceit, her forehead creased in deep thought. "We need to approach this from multiple fronts. Weaken Klein's operation while fortifying our own," she suggests. Her strategy is met with nods of approval from her siblings, who understand the precarious situation they're in. As the day grows into evening, their plan takes shape. Samantha's investigation into their financial standing reveals they're stronger than they initially feared. This welcome news brings a sigh of relief from Alex, who has been concerned about their financial ability to stand against Klein's onslaught. The next few days are a whirlwind of activity. Meetings, calls, and strategy sessions become their routine. They approach trusted allies, negotiate new alliances, and prepare to counter Klein's moves. Their unity and resolve, stronger than ever, fuel their determination to expose Klein's corruption. At last, they sit together in the study, the day's work done. A sense of exhaustion clings to them, but it's mixed with a powerful determination. They understand the road ahead is long and challenging, but they are prepared. The battle has begun, and the Carringtons are ready to fight. As Samantha aptly puts it, this is our fight, and we won't back down. With these words, a newfound energy fills the room, erasing their weariness. Their determination resurfaces stronger than ever, ready to challenge the storm that awaits. The Carringtons, once the victims of Klein's manipulations, are now the architects of his downfall. Chapter 14. The First Strike. The next morning the sun dawns over the Carrington mansion, but its usual tranquility is replaced with an undercurrent of anticipation. The day has finally arrived to put their plan into action. As the sun creeps over the horizon, its light dancing over the estate, the Carringtons are already in the study, sipping their morning coffee, their eyes glued to various screens that depict their chosen battleground, the world of finance, business, and political alliances. Alex sits at the head of the table, running his fingers over the plans laid out before him. He seems deep in thought, contemplating the high stakes that come with their first offensive. Beside him, Laura flips through several dossiers, her eyes narrowed in concentration. Samantha is multitasking, one hand holding her coffee while the other scrolls through a plethora of data on her tablet. Remember, Klein has been at this game for a long time. He has alliances we're unaware of, and he will not hesitate to use them against us, Alex reminds his sisters, a seriousness underlining his usually calm demeanor. I've already initiated a financial audit on Klein's corporations, Samantha announces, her gaze not leaving the tablet. It's a two-pronged strategy. It'll put him on the defensive and could expose more of his illicit activities. Laura nods approvingly, her eyes never leaving the dossiers. I've begun reaching out to our political allies, too. Several are willing to back us up, provided we can prove Klein's underhanded activities. They're hesitant, but they'll come around once we start uncovering evidence. Their conversation is interrupted by the sudden ringing of Alex's phone. He glances at the caller ID, his brow furrowing. It's a reporter from the National Tribune. We've been expecting this, he says, before answering the call. Hello. Alex Carrington speaking, he says, and the room falls silent. They listen to Alex's conversation, their attention focused on his every word and reaction. His responses are carefully worded, giving away little, but hinting at much. He understands the power of the media and knows how to leverage it to their advantage. As he finishes the call, a steely resolve lights up his eyes. The battle has officially begun. The reporter got a tip about our move against Klein. The news will be out by the evening edition. We've just cast the first stone. His declaration is met with a determined silence. Samantha and Laura share a look, understanding that there's no turning back now. They have officially declared war against Klein, and the coming days will test their unity, resolve, and strength. Chapter 15. The Media Storm. As the day stretches into the evening, the Carrington estate is abuzz with anticipation. The release of the evening edition of the National Tribune, the country's most prominent daily, is only moments away. In the drawing room, Alex, Laura, and Samantha gather around the antique coffee table, where a sleek tablet streams the national news live. The air in the room grows heavy with tension, a quiet symphony of ticking clocks and their collective breaths filling the silence. Alex clasps his hands together, resting his chin atop his knuckles. His eyes are glued to the tablet, anticipation radiating off him in waves. Laura, always the more patient of the three, has her eyes half closed in contemplation, her fingers tapping rhythmically against the armrest. Samantha is the most outwardly anxious, her leg bouncing subtly, a telltale sign of her inner turmoil. Alex, this is a gamble, Samantha admits, her gaze never straying from the tablet. The media can be a fickle beast. We're placing a lot of faith in them taking our side. Alex nods, acknowledging her concern. I know, Sam, but remember, we're not just playing for sympathy here. We're showing the world that Klein is not untouchable, that his fortress has cracks. It's a necessary move. The room falls silent once more, the tense atmosphere amplifying the chirping of the evening crickets outside. Suddenly, the news anchor's voice breaks the silence, causing their heads to jerk toward the tablet. Breaking news. The Carrington family declares a financial war on business tycoon Richard Klein. Their collective breaths catch in their throats as they listen to the reporter detail their initial moves against Klein. The media seems to be on their side, at least for now, as the anchor mentions potential illegal activities by Klein that the Carringtons aim to uncover. The tension in the room dissolves as they let out their held breaths. Samantha manages a shaky laugh, running a hand through her hair. Well, we've done it now. There's no turning back. Laura turns to her siblings, her face glowing in the dim light. This is just the beginning. Klein will fight back, and we need to be ready. We can't afford to rest on our laurels. Alex stands up, a newfound determination lighting his features. You're right, tomorrow we start the real work. We'll dig into every facet of Klein's empire until we find what we need. Today we've taken our first step into the battlefield. Tomorrow the fight begins. Chapter 16. The battle begins. As dawn breaks, casting the sprawling Carrington estate in a golden hue, the family is already up and running. Alex, the relentless leader, has assumed his position at the head of the massive oak dining table. The day's newspapers and several electronic devices spread before him. Samantha sits to his right, an array of complex financial reports strewn across her space. Laura, on his left, flips through a myriad of legal documents, her analytical mind already working to spot a potential loophole they could exploit. The room is abuzz with activity, each sibling playing their part in the fight against Richard Klein. It's an orchestra of rustling papers, tapping keyboards, and occasional hushed conversations. However, beneath the flurry of movement and sound, a deep sense of urgency resides, a shared understanding that the stakes are high and time is a precious commodity they can't afford to waste. "We need to establish a solid legal front," Laura states, pushing her glasses up her nose as she scans through the thick legal papers before her. Her voice is firm, a reflection of her unwavering focus. "If we can tie Klein up in legal battles, it will slow him down and give us more time to dig into his financials." Alex nods, taking in her words as he folds the newspaper he'd been reading. "Yes, that makes sense. Sam, how are we looking on the financial front?" Samantha looks up from the screen of her laptop, rubbing her temples. "It's a complex web, Alex. Klein's not stupid. He's layered his finances across multiple holdings and shell companies. But there are inconsistencies, transactions that don't add up, need more time." Their dialogue continues in this manner, a strategy session conducted with utmost seriousness. They discuss their steps, formulating a plan that caters to each of their strengths. Despite the weight of their task, a sense of unity binds them, their shared mission driving them forward. As the sun rises higher, the siblings find themselves immersed in their individual tasks. The room, a battlefield in its own right, continues to resonate with the sounds of their concentrated efforts. They're united against a common enemy, their resolve as unyielding as the walls of the estate that has been their home and sanctuary. The day stretches into the evening, a tangible testament to their tireless work. As night falls, they gather their findings, discussing their progress and adjusting their strategy accordingly. It's an uphill battle, a war they've chosen to wage, and despite the growing exhaustion, none of them is willing to back down. "We've started something big, something that could change everything," Alex murmurs, his eyes reflecting the resolve that has kept them going. "No matter what, we need to see this through. For our family, for our father." His words, sincere and resolute, echo in the grand dining room. As they end their day, they know the battle is far from over. But with each passing moment, each revealed secret, each step taken, they're proving that they're more than capable of holding their own in this war. As they head to their respective rooms, a shared determination fuels them, the promise of a new day, a new fight, propelling them forward. Chapter 17. A visit from the past. On a typically bright and sunny morning, the Carrington siblings are at their stations, the tension in the room almost tangible as they work on their respective tasks. The focus is palpable, the fervor undeniable. Suddenly there's a knock at the grand front door, breaking the rhythmic harmony of their concerted effort. A momentary silence descends upon them, each glancing at the other in surprise. Their visitor is unexpected, their concentration momentarily broken. The family butler, Thompson, a man of dignity and unyielding loyalty to the Carrington household, makes his way towards the door. He's been serving the family for as long as anyone can remember, a silent sentinel and guardian of their secrets. His steps echo across the marble floors, the stately sound merging with the pulsating silence in the room. The air is filled with anticipation, the siblings unable to guess who the uninvited visitor could be. As Thompson opens the door, his expression barely changing, an all-too-familiar figure steps into the grand entrance hall. It's Eliza Bishop, a woman from their past who was once a close confidant of their father. Her reappearance brings forth a wave of mixed feelings, nostalgia, surprise, a twinge of suspicion. Dressed in her signature pastel suit, her eyes hold a glint of resolve and determination. "Eliza," Alex greets, stepping forward, his tone reserved. The rest of the siblings, Laura and Samantha, watch on, their eyes warily sizing up the unexpected guest. It's been a long time. To what do we owe the pleasure? Eliza, brushing off her coat, looks up, meeting Alex's gaze with an almost fierce intensity. I heard about your father, she begins, her voice surprisingly steady, and about Klein. I think I might be able to help. A collective gasp fills the room. Each sibling exchanges a look of disbelief. Eliza Bishop, the woman who left their lives without so much as a goodbye, now stands before them, offering her assistance against Klein. It's an unexpected twist, an unforeseen event that could potentially turn the tides of their fight. Help? Samantha questions skeptically, raising an eyebrow. And why would you want to do that? I owe it to your father, Eliza responds, her gaze steady. And to myself. Klein has wronged us all in different ways. It's high time someone stood up to him. As the siblings absorb her words, they find themselves facing a tough decision. Can they trust Eliza, given their complicated past? Yet her offer holds a promise, a possible advantage in their fight against Klein. As the day progresses, the Carringtons find themselves in a position they never anticipated, trying to discern if their past ally can be trusted again. Chapter 18, Truth and Trust. Inside the lavish Carrington living room, Eliza sits across from the trio of siblings, the ambiance tense and laced with a dose of skepticism. The marble fireplace, usually a source of comfort and warmth, now serves as a mere backdrop to their uneasy dialogue. Eliza's hands, resting lightly on her lap, are the only indication of her inner calm amidst the storm of doubt and suspicion that surrounds her. Her eyes, however, remain focused, radiating an air of sincerity that's hard to overlook. Samantha, the most outspoken of the three siblings, is the first to break the silence, her voice ringing out crisp and clear in the large room. We have a hard time believing you, Eliza, she says, her tone firm, not unkind, but unwavering nonetheless. Alex and Laura nod in agreement, their faces reflecting a similar mix of skepticism and curiosity. Samantha continues, You vanished without a word, and now you appear out of the blue. It's difficult for us to just accept your offer. Eliza maintains her composure, fully aware of the skepticism her sudden arrival has brought. She takes a deep breath, preparing to share a story she has kept to herself for far too long. I owe you all an explanation, she concedes, her voice slightly shaking but honest. When I left, it was because Klein threatened my family. He promised to leave them alone if I stayed away from your father's business. The room falls into a stunned silence. The siblings exchange glances, a mixture of surprise and sympathy registering on their faces. Their father's business dealings had always been shrouded in a layer of secrecy, but Klein's threats and manipulations were more sinister than they had imagined. Alex, always the diplomat, leans forward, his voice steady as he speaks. We understand the tough position you were in, Eliza, but we need proof. Klein is powerful, and we can't afford to make a wrong move based on a story, no matter how compelling. Eliza nods, appreciating Alex's caution and reason. From her bag, she produces a small device, a digital recorder. I figured you might ask for proof. Recorded one of the threatening calls. Here, listen to it, she offers, pressing play on the device. The haunting voice of Klein echoes in the room, his threats and manipulations laid bare. The room fills with a heavy silence as Klein's voice fades away. A chill of realization washes over the Carrington siblings. They now face a newfound reality. Eliza is telling the truth. The question remains, though, can they trust her enough to accept her help? The answer will shape their fate and possibly the future of Carrington Industries. Chapter 19, The Alliance. As Klein's chilling threats fade into silence, an icy shiver runs down Laura's spine. She shifts uncomfortably on the plush leather couch, her dark eyes moving from the recorder to Eliza. Samantha, typically bold and resilient, seems shaken by the revelation, her usual bravado replaced by a rare vulnerability. Alex, stoic as ever, simply nods, processing the revelation with a pensive expression. The once lively room now brims with a palpable tension, the ornate chandelier above casting a dim glow that matches the grim mood. Thank you for sharing this, Eliza, Alex finally says, breaking the heavy silence. His voice, though steady, betrays a hint of unease, It's clear now that we're dealing with a bigger threat than we initially thought. He shares a grim look with Samantha and Laura, their faces reflecting his own concern. We need a strategy, a solid one, to deal with Klein. Eliza's face is a mask of determination as she nods at Alex's statement. She knows the stakes are high, yet she can't help but feel a sliver of hope. I have a plan, she discloses, her voice ringing with certainty. She leans forward, drawing their attention, her eyes meeting each of theirs. It involves digging into your father's past dealings with Klein. There's a paper trail that Klein must have left behind. Samantha chews her bottom lip, contemplating Eliza's words. She has always been the more skeptical of the three. But Eliza's honesty and Klein's threats have given her pause. Digging up Dad's past could uncover secrets that might hurt Carrington Industries. She voices her concern, her gaze intense. Laura and Alex nod, echoing Samantha's fears. Samantha's eyes, however, are trained on Eliza, searching for any hint of deception. I understand your concerns, Samantha, Eliza assures, her tone firm yet empathetic. But the truth can also set us free. If we can expose Klein's manipulation, we can not only save Carrington Industries, but also clear your father's name. Her words hang in the air, the magnitude of their implications weighing heavily in the room. A moment of silence follows Eliza's declaration. The siblings exchange knowing looks, their individual doubts wavering in the face of Eliza's determination and the grim reality of their situation. After a few moments, Samantha breaks the silence, her voice imbued with a newfound resolution. "All right, Eliza," she declares, meeting Eliza's gaze head-on. "We're in." With Samantha's affirmation, a new alliance is formed within the walls of the Carrington mansion, built on trust, driven by a common enemy, and fortified by a shared goal, to save their legacy and honor their father's name. Little do they know, this alliance will face tests, challenges, and revelations that will change the course of their lives forever. Chapter 20. The Plan. As the word "in" resonates in the room, Eliza takes a deep breath, allowing the reality of the moment to sink in. The gravity of their situation is not lost on her. The risks are immense, but the siblings' trust in her fills her with resolve. She looks at each of them, Alex, Samantha, Laura, and nods appreciatively, a silent acknowledgement of their united front against Klein. Their decision also signals a new level of trust and commitment among them, a stark contrast to the initial suspicion and resistance Eliza faced. "So, what's the plan?" Alex finally breaks the silence, his voice calm yet filled with a sense of urgency. He sits up straighter in his chair, his blue eyes focused intently on Eliza. Laura and Samantha follow suit, their faces a mirror of seriousness and anticipation. It's a sight that makes Eliza feel both comforted and pressured. "We start with a deep dive into your father's past," Eliza begins, her voice steady. She had given a lot of thought to the plan, but explaining it to the siblings is a different beast entirely. We need to find any ties to Klein that he might have had. Financial transactions, meetings, phone calls, anything. Her gaze moves to Alex, who is responsible for the company's operations and therefore the most familiar with their father's dealings. Samantha raises an eyebrow, a slight edge of skepticism in her gaze. "And where do we even start to look for this kind of information?" she asks, crossing her arms over her chest. Her posture is defensive but open, a clear indicator that she's willing to give this plan a shot despite her reservations. Eliza meets Samantha's gaze confidently, not taken aback by the question. "We have access to your father's personal documents in office. His laptop might still contain relevant emails or files," she suggests, a hint of excitement seeping into her voice. "And we can also go through the company's financial records. If there were any transactions involving Klein, we might find a lead there." A contemplative silence descends upon the room as the siblings take in Eliza's words. Alex is the first to break it, nodding slowly as he mulls over the plan. "It's going to be a lengthy and tedious process," he states, not as a complaint but as a mere fact. His gaze then shifts to Samantha and Laura, his next words echoing with resolve. "But if it can help us save Carrington Industries and our father's reputation, it's worth every second." The room fills with an air of shared determination. They each understand the magnitude of the task that lies ahead, yet there's a shared resolve among them. Eliza looks at the siblings, seeing the unwavering determination in their eyes, and can't help but feel a surge of hope. This, she knows, is the first step in a long and arduous journey, a journey that she is more than ready to embark on, with them against their common enemy, Klein. Chapter 21. Into the Past. In the days following the team's formation, Eliza quickly finds herself deeply immersed in the sea of her investigation. Carrington Industries' vast office, housing the old records and personal files of the late James Carrington, serves as her hub. It is in this chaotic labyrinth of documents and data where she spends the majority of her waking hours, unearthing the secrets of the past. Upon entering the office, the air is heavy with a sense of history and nostalgia. The walls are lined with shelves brimming with documents, dusty files, and various trinkets. Pictures of James Carrington at different stages of his life add a personal touch to the space, marking the passage of time. Yet amid this sense of nostalgia, the office also emanates a peculiar sadness, as if mourning its owner's absence. One morning, while poring over a stack of financial reports, Eliza finds herself talking to Laura, who has decided to lend her a hand. "Look at this," Eliza says, holding up a faded photo of a younger James Carrington with a man she doesn't recognize. "Do you know who this is?" Eliza asks, curiosity evident in her voice. She has found numerous photos of the same man throughout James's things and suspects he might be important. Laura squints at the photograph, her brow furrowing in concentration. "I think that's Albert Klein," she finally says, recognition flashing in her eyes. "He was a close associate of Dad's at some point, but I didn't know they were this close." She swallows hard, clearly uncomfortable with the revelation. As they dig deeper, more connections between James Carrington and Albert Klein surface, frequent mentions of Klein in James's emails, significant monetary transactions, and several shared business deals become apparent. The connections are undeniable, and Eliza feels a chill run down her spine. "This is it," she whispers to herself, staring at the web of information they've unearthed. Yet it's not just the scale of the connections that unnerves her, it's the timing. All these ties go silent about a year before James Carrington's death, and no one seems to know why. This discovery raises more questions than it answers, and the siblings find themselves grappling with the harsh reality. Their father's relationship with Klein wasn't just professional, it was personal, and it was hidden for a reason. "That changes everything," Alex murmurs, leaning against the door frame. He's been standing there observing Eliza and Laura, absorbing the revelations. His expression is unreadable, but his voice carries a hint of betrayal. The room descends into silence, each person processing the information in their own way. This turn of events complicates their mission, and they know it, but it also strengthens their resolve. They are not just fighting for their father's company anymore. They are fighting for his legacy. And in that moment, despite the shock and the uncertainty, they feel more united and determined than ever before. Chapter 22. A Visit to Klein. The next day, the sun is setting as Eliza, Alex, and Laura set off to pay a visit to Albert Klein, who now lives a quiet life on the outskirts of the city. As they approach Klein's residence, an imposing yet slightly dilapidated mansion, Alex slows the car to a crawl. The mansion seems almost out of place in its suburban setting, its grandeur faded with time, and the once lush gardens now overgrown and untamed. "It's been ages since I last saw this place," Laura murmurs, her gaze focused on the mansion. She remembers coming here as a child, when her father and Klein were still close. However, the mansion now seems more like a haunting relic of the past, its glory days long gone. They park their car, and after a moment of hesitation, make their way up the stone path leading to the front door. As Alex knocks, the door creaks open under his touch, revealing a dimly lit, expansive hallway. Before they can call out, a frail figure emerges from the shadows, Albert Klein himself. He's aged considerably, his face lined with years of hardship, but his eyes still hold a spark of the shrewd businessman he once was. "Well, well, the Carrington kids, to what do I owe the pleasure?" he says, his voice a raspy whisper. His eyes flit between the three siblings, curiosity and confusion mingling in his gaze. "We're here to discuss our father, James Carrington," Eliza begins, maintaining her composure despite the tension crackling in the air. Klein visibly tenses at the mention of James's name, but motions for them to enter. They follow him into a grand living room furnished with antique pieces that hint at better days. Once seated, Klein takes a deep breath and looks at them, an odd mix of resignation and curiosity in his eyes. "I've been wondering when you'd show up," he says, his voice barely audible. "I knew James wouldn't tell you about me, about us." The next few hours are filled with revelations as Klein tells them about his relationship with James Carrington, their friendship, their business ventures, their fallouts. The story is a roller coaster of successes and failures, loyalty and betrayal. Klein doesn't hold back, sharing even the ugly parts with a brutal honesty that leaves them speechless. As they drive back home, each of them is lost in their own thoughts, processing the new information. The visit to Klein has opened a Pandora's box of secrets, but it has also brought them closer to understanding their father, the man behind Carrington Industries, and the roots of their current predicament. Their resolve to save their father's legacy solidifies further, promising a battle that would put everything they've learned to the test. Chapter 23. Strategy Meeting. Morning dawns bright and early on the Carrington household. The revelations from their meeting with Klein still hang heavy in the air, casting long shadows across their normally cheerful breakfast table. Alex, Eliza, and Laura sit together, their uneaten meals growing cold in front of them as they digest the reality of their father's past. Klein's story changes everything. Alex finally breaks the silence, his voice echoing in the room. His fingers drum rhythmically on the tabletop, betraying his anxious thoughts. Eliza and Laura nod in agreement, their own expressions mirroring their brother's concern. Laura sighs, looking at the remnants of her breakfast. "It's like we didn't really know Dad at all," she confesses, her voice barely a whisper. She stirs her coffee absent-mindedly, creating ripples that seem to mirror the tumultuous thoughts in her mind. "But we know him now," Eliza interjects, her voice steady and determined. She turns to her siblings, her gaze piercing. "And we have to use this knowledge to protect Carrington Industries." She stands up abruptly, her chair screeching against the marble floor. "We need a strategy." The rest of the morning is spent huddled in the living room, poring over company reports, financial statements, and Klein's revelations. They dissect their father's life, searching for answers, for loopholes, for anything that can help them in the upcoming battle. They argue, disagree, and even snap at each other, but they also listen, understand, and ultimately find a way to work together. According to Klein, Dad had an unfulfilled contract with DeWitt Corp., Alex states, pointing at a document spread on the table. "If we can prove that DeWitt Corp. was in the wrong, it might shift the favor in our court." Laura looks skeptical, her eyes scanning the document. "It's a long shot, Alex. DeWitt Corp. is powerful. They have top-notch lawyers." Eliza, who has been quietly listening, suddenly speaks up. "But it's a shot we have to take. This is our only lead right now." She turns to face her siblings, her gaze resolute. "We need to find that contract. It's our best bet." By the end of the day, they've laid out their strategy. It's a complex and risky plan, but it's all they have. And as they look at each other, a shared understanding passes between them. The understanding that they're in this together until the end. The day closes with a renewed sense of hope and the promise of a fierce battle ahead. Chapter 24. The search begins. As the new day dawns, a new chapter begins for the Carrington siblings. The plan they had formed is not just on paper anymore. It has taken root in their minds. It breathes and pulses with their every heartbeat. They understand that the tasks ahead are enormous and daunting, but they are ready to meet them head-on. They are Carringtons, after all, bred in resilience and determination. The search for the mysterious contract with DeWitt Corp. becomes their top priority. Their father's old office, a place that had always seemed to them a sanctuary of calm and control, now turns into a battlefield of chaos and anxiety. They rummage through piles of paperwork, old files, documents, each more obscure and bewildering than the last. The room reverberates with the crinkling sound of papers and the sighs of frustration. "We've been through this pile 3 times, Eliza," Laura says, rubbing her temples in exhaustion. Her eyes have turned red from poring over countless documents, and her once neatly tied hair has come undone. She lets out a heavy sigh, looking around the room that has turned into a war zone of scattered papers. Alex, equally tired but still persisting, looks up from his stack and addresses his sister. "Yes, but we might have missed something, Laura." His voice carries a hint of optimism that seems to give them the strength to continue. He bends back to his task, his fingers trailing over each document with meticulous care. Despite their exhaustion and the growing sense of despair, Eliza continues to be their pillar of strength. "Remember, we only need one breakthrough," she says, her voice echoing through the room, a beacon of hope in the exhausting pursuit. She lifts another file from the pile in front of her, a determined gleam in her eyes. Days turn into nights and nights into days as they relentlessly continue their search. Coffee becomes their best friend, sleep their distant acquaintance. Tensions rise, tempers flare, and yet the unyielding bond between the siblings holds strong. Amid the sea of documents, they continue to sail, their only guiding star, the elusive contract. Finally, just as hope begins to ebb away, just when the mountain of documents seems insurmountable, Eliza lets out a triumphant cry. "I found it!" She brandishes a yellowing piece of paper, her face glowing with triumph and relief. Alex and Laura rush to her side, their tired faces lighting up at the sight of the document that might just be their lifeline. The room that was filled with tension and fatigue moments ago now rings with victory. They pore over the contract, their eyes devouring each word as if it's the most important text they've ever read. This could be it, the key to their salvation, and for the first time in a long time, they dare to hope again. The fight for Carrington Industries is far from over, but they've just armed themselves with a powerful weapon. Chapter 25. The Contract Unveiled. The sense of accomplishment resonates through the room, bouncing off the walls, imbuing the Carrington siblings with newfound energy. The document, though worn and faded with time, becomes the physical manifestation of hope. They sit huddled together around their father's old mahogany desk, eyes riveted to the ancient piece of paper. The world outside ceases to exist. There is only the three of them and the much sought-after contract. Eliza, being the eldest, assumes the responsibility of reading the contract aloud. Her voice, usually so confident, carries an unfamiliar tremor, underscoring the importance of this moment. This agreement, made and entered into this 12th day of November, 1991, by and between Carrington Industries, represented by Thomas R. Carrington, and DeWitt Corp., represented by Arnold P. DeWitt. She reads, each word heavy with anticipation. As the contractual clauses unravel, it becomes evident that their father had negotiated an advantageous deal, something they'd come to expect of the man who built an empire from scratch. Alex, his analytical mind engaged, follows along attentively, his eyes darting back and forth between the document and Eliza. Laura, meanwhile, clings to every word, her hands fidgeting in her lap. Every now and then the siblings pause their reading, debating and dissecting each term and condition. Clause 7, Eliza points at the text, her eyebrows furrowing in concentration. It says any attempts at a hostile takeover must first receive a unanimous vote by the Carrington Board of Directors. Her voice trails off as they all realize the implications. Their father had left them more control than they had previously thought. Alex breaks the heavy silence, a note of triumph sneaking into his voice. This means they can't take over without our consent. Father really did think of everything, didn't he? He seems almost awestruck, as if seeing his father's foresight for the first time. Laura, suddenly filled with a surge of emotion, whispers, "He was protecting us, even when we didn't realize it." Her words hang in the air, touching each of them in a profound way. The respect and love they have for their father grow tenfold in that moment. With newfound clarity, they return to the contract, delving deeper into the carefully crafted words and clauses. The situation, which had seemed so dire and almost hopeless, now looks less intimidating. They have a fighting chance, a possibility of retaining their family's legacy. The night stretches into the early hours of the morning, but none of them feel the pull of sleep. The contract, their lifeline, holds them captivated. Hope, like a small flame in the darkness, has been rekindled in their hearts. Their path, though still fraught with challenges, now has a glimmer of light guiding them towards victory. Chapter 26. A Battle Plan. Daylight sneaks in through the cracks of the heavy, drawn curtains, signaling the start of a new day. None of the Carrington siblings have left their father's study, now turned into their war room. Despite their individual physical exhaustion, a collective sense of determination propels them forward. The room, usually echoing with the hollow silence of loss, is now buzzing with strategic discussions. Eliza, with her clear-headed business acumen, takes the lead. She sits at the head of the table, the contract spread out before her. Her hair, usually neatly pinned up, is now loose, cascading down her shoulders. Her attire, usually formal and pristine, is wrinkled, bearing witness to the long hours spent in the study. But her eyes, those are the same, sharp, focused, and full of resolve. "We need to organize a board meeting immediately," she states, her voice leaving no room for debate. "DeWitt Corp needs to know we're aware of the clause and are prepared to use it to our advantage." There's a fierce determination in her words, reflecting the leader she has become. Alex, who has always admired his sister's tenacity, nods in agreement. "Yes, and we need to ensure all our board members are on our side. DeWitt will undoubtedly try to sway them," he adds, his analytical mind anticipating the adversary's moves. Laura, usually the quietest of the three, chimes in. "We should also prepare a press statement. Let's get ahead of the narrative, assert our intentions publicly," she suggests, surprising her siblings with her proactive approach. Their suggestions spur a flurry of activity. They begin to assign tasks, delegating responsibilities according to their individual strengths. Eliza assumes the role of the negotiator, taking on the task of meeting the board members. Alex, with his intricate knowledge of the industry, starts to draft a solid business plan to present to the board. Laura, with her unique understanding of public perception, begins drafting the press statement. The hours roll by, the sunlight gradually filling the room. Phone calls are made, messages sent, documents prepared. The once peaceful study transforms into a hive of activity. The contract, the weapon they hadn't known they possessed, lies at the center of it all, a constant reminder of their purpose and the legacy they are fighting for. Despite the daunting path ahead, an unfamiliar but welcome feeling of optimism lingers in the room. Their father's protective foresight has given them a chance, a fighting chance to protect their legacy. United in their goal, the Carrington siblings forge ahead, ready to wage their battle. Chapter 27, Facing the Board. The air in the boardroom of Carrington Corp is thick with tension, its usual calm sophistication replaced by a palpable apprehension. Today isn't just any regular board meeting. It's the battlefield where the future of the company will be determined. The large mahogany table that usually serves as a symbol of shared decision-making today feels more like a line in the sand, separating the Carrington siblings from the rest of the board. Eliza, sitting at the head of the table, steels herself for the task at hand. Her outfit, a tailored suit, is a symbol of her readiness for battle. Her makeup is impeccable, her hair is styled perfectly, and she exudes a sense of unyielding determination. The scent of her strong, musky perfume fills the room, serving as a reminder of her presence and strength. Her eyes scan the room, meeting each board member's gaze with confidence. "All right," she begins, breaking the silence that has settled over the room. "Let's get straight to the point. We're aware of the clause, and we're prepared to do whatever it takes to keep the company within the family." Her voice is assertive, powerful, echoing against the silent walls of the room. There's a collective intake of breath from the board members. Surprise and concern mix in their expressions. Gregory Harris, an older gentleman with an air of authority, is the first to respond. He adjusts his tie, clears his throat, and with a pointed look at Eliza, he asks, "Are you implying that you're willing to pay the debt yourselves?" Alex, from Eliza's side, intervenes. His voice calm and steady, he addresses Harris's question. "We're implying that we have a plan to not only pay the debt, but also to take the company to new heights. We're Carringtons, this is our legacy, and we're willing to fight for it." Laura takes her cue from Alex, adding to his statement, "And we believe in transparency. We want you, our esteemed board members, to be the first to know our intentions. We're not just shareholders, we're partners, and we wish to move forward with your support." The room is silent for a moment as the board members absorb the Carrington siblings' unified front. Their shared conviction, their determination, it's infectious. There's a sense of admiration, respect even, that spreads through the room. The Carringtons have made their stand. Now it's up to the board to choose a side in this looming battle. Chapter 28, The Showdown. The morning sun floods through the large windows of the boardroom, casting long shadows over the room and adding an air of seriousness to the atmosphere. The tension in the room is a physical entity, almost as real as the luxurious leather chairs that surround the mahogany table. The board members are all gathered around, a medley of tailored suits and expensive accessories. They watch the Carrington siblings carefully, trying to gauge their reactions, attempting to read the play before the game even begins. Eliza leans forward, placing her neatly manicured hands flat on the table, her hazel eyes sweeping over the assembled faces. As Alex and Laura have already stated, she begins, her voice steady and assured, we have a plan. But this plan requires your faith in us, your trust in our ability to guide Carrington Corp back to the top. There's a sense of determination etched across Eliza's features that's mirrored in her siblings. Alex is every bit as composed as Eliza, while Laura's eyes are ablaze with passion. They're a united front, a formidable trio ready to face down any opposition. The tense silence that follows Eliza's statement is abruptly broken when Harris speaks. And how do you propose we trust you, given the current situation? Eliza meets his gaze head on, an undeniable spark of defiance in her eyes. You trust us because we are Carringtons, because this company is not just a business to us, it's our legacy, she states firmly, her words resounding in the room. You trust us because we are prepared to put everything on the line for this company, are you? Her challenge hangs in the air, a gauntlet thrown at the feet of the board members. The room falls into a tense silence, the only sound being the soft ticking of the antique clock on the wall. It's a moment that feels stretched, a bubble of time that encompasses the destiny of Carrington Corp. Suddenly there's a shift in the atmosphere, almost imperceptible, but there nonetheless. The board members exchange glances, murmurs pass amongst them, nods of agreement given. Then one by one they start to speak, voicing their support for the Carrington siblings. It's not unanimous, there are dissenters, but the majority stands with the Carringtons. They've won the first battle, the trust of the board, but the war is far from over. Chapter 29. A Plan in Motion. The adrenaline high from their victory at the boardroom meeting propels the Carrington siblings into the throes of their rescue mission. They're tucked away in Eliza's glass-walled office, the sparkling city below them oblivious to the decisions being made high above. The sunlight filtering through the windows paints everything in a warm golden hue, casting an ethereal glow on their faces. Charts, graphs, and reports are spread across Eliza's sleek desk, forming a battleground of data and numbers. We need to tackle the debt problem first, Alex says, his eyes scanning the financial reports. He's the financier of the trio, the one with a natural affinity for numbers. He's impeccably dressed in a navy suit, contrasting against the light, airy room. His statement fills the air, echoing off the polished marble floors, bouncing off the pristine white walls adorned with tasteful modern art. Laura nods in agreement, her attention fully on Alex. She's seated on the edge of the desk, legs crossed, her business attire offset by the edgy, bold jewelry she wears. We need to restructure the loans, maybe negotiate the interest rates. We also need to look into divesting some non-core assets to free up capital, she adds, her marketing and strategic acumen coming into play. She's the brainstormer, the one who excels in finding creative solutions to seemingly impossible problems. Eliza, the CEO and the one with the burden of leadership, absorbs their words, contemplating the path that lies ahead. She's standing by the windows, looking out at the skyline, the powerful persona she presents to the world slightly offset by the soft afternoon light filtering through her loose auburn hair. What about our public image? We're taking a hit there too. She interjects, her concern evident in her voice. Alex looks up from the reports, locking eyes with Eliza. We tackled that too, simultaneously. We need to show the world that we're still a strong player, he asserts. His conviction is infectious, bolstering the determination that already resides within the trio. They continue discussing late into the night, the office gradually becoming a blur of lights and shadows as the sun sets and the city comes alive beneath them. They debate, strategize, and sometimes argue, their different viewpoints colliding and eventually melding into a cohesive plan. It's not going to be an easy road, they're aware of that, but it's a road they're prepared to travel, together. As the city's nightlights flicker and dance outside their glass sanctuary, they stand united, ready to wage war for their legacy. The Carrington Corps, Chapter 30, United We Stand. In the heart of Carrington Corp, the dawn of the next day brings a renewed vigor to the trio. They have spent the night charting out their plan, and now it is time to execute. The sun is barely peeking through the horizon, painting the city in a palette of oranges and pinks, a stunning contrast to the whitewashed walls of Eliza's office. The siblings, despite the lack of sleep, are brimming with energy. The office hums with determination, the air charged with anticipation. Charts and graphs, once spread out in a haphazard fashion, now tell a coherent story of their plan. Eliza stands tall by the window, her gaze on the horizon, watching the sun rise. She turns to her siblings, her usually soft green eyes hardened with resolve. She's the first to speak, breaking the hush of the early morning. "It's time we face our employees. They deserve to know what's happening," she says, her voice echoing the stern resolve she feels. Her red hair glows in the soft morning light, an aura of courage surrounding her. "Yes," Laura agrees, "transparency is key. We've always maintained a culture of openness, and this crisis shouldn't change that." She's always been the one with an empathetic soul, a marketer who understands the importance of human connections. Dressed in a bold power suit, she stands next to Eliza, her younger sister, but in no way less formidable. Alex, already at his laptop, looks up at his sisters, nodding in agreement. He's always admired Laura's empathy and Eliza's leadership. "I'll draft an email to all staff. We'll also schedule a town hall meeting for this afternoon." He's the financier who thrives amidst numbers and chaos, always finding patterns and solutions. His sharp mind is as clear as the crisp morning outside. As the sun continues to rise, the city stirring awake below them, they get to work. Alex crafts a carefully worded email, Laura brainstorming on crisis communication strategies, and Eliza mentally preparing to address her employees, to provide them assurance in these uncertain times. The office, once filled with the stillness of anticipation, is now buzzing with purposeful activity. The road ahead is long, fraught with challenges, but they stand together, ready to confront whatever comes their way. United, they are a force to reckon with, and the Carrington legacy isn't going down without a fight. Chapter 31, The Town Hall Meeting. The clock on the wall strikes 3 in the afternoon. It's time for the much-awaited town hall meeting. The air buzzes with a sense of tension, not dissimilar to the static before a thunderstorm. The employees of Carrington Corp have filled the grand auditorium, its usually lively atmosphere now reduced to a solemn stillness. The stage, set with 3 podiums, sits under the heavy gaze of the staff, awaiting the arrival of the Carrington siblings. Offstage, Eliza, Laura, and Alex share a moment of silence, fortifying themselves for the difficult conversation ahead. Eliza steps forward, leading her siblings onto the stage, the overhead lights casting long shadows behind them. The auditorium falls even quieter, the silence deafening. Eliza takes a moment, scanning the sea of expectant faces. She acknowledges their concern, their apprehension. She steps up to the microphone, her voice echoing throughout the grand hall. "Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here," she begins, her voice steady and firm. Laura follows, adding her warm tones to the mix. "We understand that there have been concerns and speculations regarding the future of Carrington Corp. We're here today to address those and reassure you of our unwavering commitment to this company and to you, our family." Her words resonate with sincerity, and many in the crowd visibly relax, their trust in Laura's honesty calming their anxiety. Alex, with a stack of documents in his hands, takes over next. "Let's talk numbers," he says, a hint of his usual joviality creeping into his voice. "There is no denying the setback we faced, but we also have a strong recovery plan in place. We've prepared a detailed presentation to walk you all through it." He knows his words, and the transparency of their strategy will instill confidence and assurance in their employees. The meeting extends into the early evening with detailed presentations, probing questions, and honest answers. As the sun sets, the siblings leave the stage to a round of applause, the once heavy air replaced with a sense of camaraderie and shared determination. The 3 of them retreat to Eliza's office, the weight of the day settling in. "We did well today," Eliza says, looking at her siblings. Her voice, though tired, carries a note of pride. She knows this is just the beginning, but she also knows they have taken the first crucial step together. Chapter 32, Rumors and Reassurances. The town hall meeting has wrapped, but the echo of the Carrington siblings' words lingers in the halls of the company. Small clusters of employees gather in corridors and coffee rooms, exchanging thoughts and impressions. The air is ripe with curiosity, but also a newfound sense of hope. The honesty and transparency exhibited by Eliza, Laura, and Alex have instilled a newfound confidence in the team. There's a shared feeling that while the road to recovery will not be easy, they're in this journey together. In the corner of the cafeteria, two senior engineers, Mark and Jenna, huddle around a cup of lukewarm coffee. Mark takes a sip, grimacing slightly at the taste. "Could use more sugar," he mumbles, then straightens up, turning to Jenna. "What do you make of the meeting?" he asks, his brow furrowed. Jenna leans back in her chair, thoughtful. "I think it went well," she says. "They didn't just give us hollow reassurances. They showed us a plan and they acknowledged the issues. That's more than what most companies would do." Meanwhile, in the more secluded realm of the finance department, Susan, a young analyst, engages her colleague Mike in a discussion. "I was honestly impressed by how Alex handled the numbers," she admits, her eyes bright with admiration. Mike, a more seasoned member of the team, nods in agreement. "Yes, he was straightforward, didn't sugarcoat the setbacks. It's going to be a steep climb, but at least we know what we're dealing with." The words of the Carrington siblings have also reached the external stakeholders. Martin, a key investor in the company, dials up his friend George, also a significant shareholder. "Did you watch the town hall?" he questions, the urgency in his voice indicating his concerns. George, always the more relaxed one, chuckles. "Yes, I did, Martin. And I must say I am quite reassured. The Carringtons are clearly aware of the problems and have a plan in place. I believe we should stick with them." Back in her office, Eliza gazes out of the window, the city's lights twinkling in the early evening darkness. Her heart feels lighter than it has in days. She knows they have a long journey ahead, but the events of the day have cemented her belief that they have taken the right step towards recovery. Her phone buzzes. A text message from Laura pops up. "Good job today, sis. Tomorrow we hit the ground running." She smiles at the message, replying with a simple, "Agreed. Here's to us and to Carrington Corp." She sighs, knowing that tomorrow they'll start turning their words into actions. Chapter 33. A New Dawn. The sun is just starting to peek over the horizon when Eliza, already dressed in her running gear, steps out of her front door. She begins her usual morning run, passing by the familiar sights of her neighborhood. As her feet rhythmically hit the pavement, her mind is racing, thinking about the monumental tasks that lie ahead for the Carrington Corporation. Despite the enormity of the challenge, a strange calm envelops her, a quiet confidence that they are on the right path. On her way, she stops by a local cafe, Cup of Joe, known for its aromatic coffee and warm pastries. The barista, a bubbly girl named Emily, greets her with a warm smile. "Good morning, Miss Carrington," she chirps. "The usual?" Eliza nods, leaning against the counter while Emily prepares her order. "Heard about the big meeting at your company," Emily mentions casually, handing Eliza a piping hot cappuccino and a freshly baked croissant. "My cousin works there, said things are looking up. It's good to see some positivity around here." Eliza smiles at her words, feeling a sense of gratification. Laura, in the meantime, finds herself in her home office, surrounded by stacks of reports and plans. It's still early, but her mind is already at full speed, crafting strategies for the various departments of the company. She sips her tea, her eyes scanning a particularly daunting financial report. Suddenly, her phone buzzes. It's a message from Alex. "Hey, Laura, can we meet later? I have some ideas about cost optimization I'd like to discuss." She types back a quick reply. "Absolutely, Alex. Let's meet in the afternoon." Over at Carrington Corpa's production facility, the day shift has just begun. The floor supervisor, a burly man named Pete, rallies his team. "Listen up, folks. We've got a new lease on life. Let's show them Carrington Corp is still the best in the game." The team responds with resounding agreement, setting the tone for a day of focused, purposeful work. By midday, Eliza, Laura, and Alex convene in their corporate office, each bringing with them their respective plans and ideas. As they begin their meeting, there's a sense of unity and resolve among them that hasn't been present in quite some time. They're no longer just siblings, they are partners ready to breathe new life into their family legacy. Throughout the day, conversations about the future of the Carrington Corporation continue to buzz both within and outside the company. From the cafe where Eliza gets her coffee to the corporate boardroom, the message is clear. Carrington Corp is ready to rise from the ashes. And as the sun sets on this new day, the siblings share a feeling of fulfillment, coupled with anticipation for the challenges that lie ahead. They know the journey won't be easy, but they are ready to face it together. Chapter 34, Strategies and Synergies. On a fresh, dewy morning, the Carrington siblings gather once again in the spacious and sunlit boardroom, ready to discuss the future of their family business. A large round table occupies the center, strewn with papers, blueprints, and laptops. An air of determination hangs heavy in the room, and a sense of shared purpose binds them together. They've been in this room countless times before, but today it feels different, more personal, and more crucial. Alex, in his usual crisp white shirt and navy trousers, is the first to speak. "We've got some tough choices ahead of us, and we can't afford any missteps," he says, setting the tone for the meeting. He pulls up a presentation on his laptop, projecting graphs and numbers onto the large screen at one end of the room. The stark reality of the company's financial status is laid bare. But the numbers don't intimidate him. They challenge him. He proposes a strategic cost-cutting plan, suggesting they streamline certain processes and eliminate redundancies. Eliza, with her dark hair tied back in a loose bun, nods as she listens, making notes on her tablet. She waits for Alex to finish before voicing her thoughts. "I agree with your plan, Alex, but we also need to focus on our employees' morale." She suggests organizing town hall meetings and interactive sessions to ensure that the workforce feels valued and heard. "We can't make this company great again without our team's full commitment and enthusiasm," she states earnestly, her words resonating in the silent room. Laura, ever the peacemaker, steps in and breaks the silence. "Both of you are right. We need a balanced approach," she says, pushing her glasses up the bridge of her nose. She lays out her ideas for a comprehensive recovery plan, including a review of all contracts, tighter budget control, and regular auditing. She insists on integrating their supply chain to optimize cost and improve efficiency. "Let's work together to formulate a plan that brings out the best of both your ideas," she proposes, gesturing towards Alex and Eliza. Throughout the day, they exchange ideas, debate strategies, and craft a cohesive plan to resuscitate their ailing company. The work is intense, and their differences in opinion often lead to heated debates. Yet amidst the arguments and occasional frustration, there's an underlying current of shared passion and respect. By the time the sun starts to set, they finally arrive at a consensus. A strategic blueprint now lies in front of them, a roadmap towards the future they envision for Carrington Corp. They agree to meet again the next day to refine the plan and start implementing it. The day ends on a hopeful note, and as they leave the boardroom, there's a palpable shift in their demeanors. It's been a long, tiring day, but they are more resolved than ever. They know that reviving their family business will be an uphill battle, but they also know they are now armed with a robust plan and a unified front. As they say their goodnights and part ways, they share a sense of cautious optimism, aware that the real work is just beginning. Chapter 35, The Wheels in Motion. The next day greets the Carringtons with a bright sun and a clear blue sky, the beautiful weather sharply contrasting the weighty task ahead of them. They assemble once again in the boardroom, filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and a renewed sense of purpose. Today, they're not just talking about strategies and plans, they're actually setting the wheels in motion. Before the meeting begins, Alex, his mind whirring with thoughts and calculations, addresses his siblings. "This is it, guys. From here, there's no turning back. We all agree on this, right?" His tone is serious, his gaze intense. He wants to ensure they are all on the same page. Eliza, clasping a cup of coffee in her hands, meets his gaze and gives a firm nod. "Absolutely, Alex. We're in this together," she replies, her voice steady and confident. The warmth of the coffee cup is comforting in her hands, a small anchor in the tumultuous sea of the challenges they face. Laura, leafing through the hefty document containing their strategic blueprint, adds, "I have faith in our plan, and I have faith in us. Let's do this." Her words ring with conviction, further bolstering the shared resolve in the room. With the affirmation complete, they dive into the nitty-gritty of their strategy. They begin by discussing their staff, allocating tasks, and outlining objectives. The conversation flows seamlessly from one topic to the next, the energy in the room palpable. They debate and deliberate, voices occasionally overlapping in their eagerness to contribute. As the day progresses, they tackle tougher decisions, restructuring departments, changing suppliers, even letting go of some long-standing employees. These are painful choices, but they understand the necessity of their actions. They stand together, facing the tide of change they're bringing, bearing the burden of their decisions as one. By mid-afternoon, they've sent out a series of emails and made numerous calls, setting in motion the changes they've agreed upon. Their plan, once just a blueprint on paper, is now starting to shape reality. The day draws to a close, and as the sun sets, casting long shadows across the boardroom, they sit back and take a breather. There's a certain tranquility in the silence that follows, a respite from the storm of activity. As they sip their coffee, watching the cityscape bathed in the warm hues of twilight, they share a moment of quiet camaraderie. There's no guarantee this will work. Alex finally breaks the silence, his gaze fixed on the fading sunlight outside. "But if there's anyone I'd bet on to pull off a miracle, it's us." His voice holds a touch of warmth and pride that leaves a lingering silence in the room. They know they're far from the finish line, but this moment of unity strengthens their belief in their shared vision. As they pack up to leave, the reality of the challenges ahead looms large. But with the support of each other, the Carrington siblings feel ready to face whatever comes their way. Despite the trials of the day, they leave the boardroom with a sense of accomplishment, knowing that they've taken the first steps towards rescuing their family legacy. Chapter 36. The First Repercussions. Early next morning, a few hours before the dawn, Alex finds himself standing before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office. The city is still sleeping, a collection of twinkling lights against the backdrop of the dark sky. He takes a sip from his cup of black coffee, his eyes reflecting the glittering skyline, his mind pondering the significant decisions they've made and the implications they hold. Suddenly, his phone buzzes, slicing through the silence. He picks it up and sees a number he doesn't recognize. Alex is about to ignore it, assuming it's a wrong number, when a hunch tells him to answer. "Hello," he says into the device, his voice thick with curiosity. The response he gets shakes him to the core. "Alex, it's Peter Jackson from the marketing department. We've been working together for years." Peter's voice is shaky, and Alex can hear the hesitance in his words. "I've received the termination letter, Alex. I didn't see it coming. After all these years, I thought..." Alex takes a deep breath, bracing himself. He knew that the first wave of layoffs would hit hard, and here it was. "Peter," he begins, his tone firm yet empathetic, "this wasn't a decision we took lightly. We're trying to save the company, and unfortunately, it involves making tough decisions." Peter falls silent on the other end, and Alex can almost picture him, shock and disappointment etched on his face. Finally, he mutters a quiet, "I understand," before hanging up. Alex stares at the phone, the magnitude of their actions hitting him like a wave. Meanwhile, Eliza is awake too, pacing in her apartment. She has just finished a call with a supplier who wasn't pleased to learn that they were switching to a more cost-effective alternative. He had raised his voice, his anger palpable, but she had stood her ground. After the call, Eliza lets out a sigh. "Change isn't easy," she muses, "but it's necessary for survival." She looks out of her window, the city's silhouette, visible in the early morning light, reflecting on the journey ahead. At the same time, Laura is sitting at her kitchen table, surrounded by piles of financial reports. She's going through the books again, making sure they didn't overlook anything. Suddenly, her phone buzzes, and she sees a text from one of their managers. The message reads, "The restructuring announcement has caused quite a stir. We have a lot of concerned and angry employees. We need to address this ASAP." Laura rubs her temples, feeling the weight of the situation. She knew the restructuring would cause unrest, but the reality of it is more intense than she anticipated. "It's going to be a long day," she mumbles to herself before typing out a response. As the morning sun starts to peek through the curtains of their respective homes, the Carrington siblings are already deep in crisis management. They've ignited the spark of change, and now they have to handle the first sparks of the resulting fire. They are no strangers to challenges, but they can't help but feel the intensity of the repercussions. However, they know it's only the beginning, and they are prepared to see it through, no matter what. Chapter 37. Tackling the aftermath. Laura, with her unwavering resilience, takes the first step in managing the crisis within the company. She sends out an email to all department heads calling for an urgent meeting. Her fingers dance across the keyboard as she types, her brows furrowed in concentration. "We need to address the staff's concerns and reassure them about the company's future," she writes, her tone professional yet empathetic. As she hits the send button, she takes a deep breath, mentally preparing herself for the challenging conversations ahead. In response to her email, messages flood her inbox, acknowledging the call for the meeting. Mixed sentiments are expressed: confusion, worry, and a glimmer of hope. Laura reads each message carefully, acknowledging their emotions and drafting a detailed response to each one. She wants to make sure that each person understands the situation and feels heard. She believes in the power of communication and is determined to use it to its fullest to navigate the company through these tough times. Meanwhile, Eliza's working on her part of the plan. She's on a conference call with their new suppliers, discussing contract terms and setting up delivery schedules. "We need these supplies to be delivered efficiently," she emphasizes, her voice strong and assertive. The suppliers, although initially surprised by the sudden shift, are cooperative. They understand the predicament of Carrington Corp. and agree to meet their demands. While Eliza is busy with the suppliers, Alex is preparing himself to address the employees. He's drafting a speech, choosing his words carefully. He knows the importance of transparency and wants to convey the truth without causing unnecessary panic. "I need to reassure them that we're doing everything we can to stabilize the situation," he mumbles to himself, running his fingers through his hair in frustration. The task is not easy, but he's determined to see it through. Finally, the time for the meeting arrives. Laura, with Alex and Eliza by her side, stands before a room full of anxious faces. The tension in the room is palpable, but she doesn't let it deter her. She starts the meeting by addressing the elephant in the room, the layoffs and the restructuring. She explains their reasoning behind the decisions, their vision for the future, and how they plan to get there. Throughout the meeting, the siblings answer a barrage of questions, address concerns, and assure their team that they're doing their best to salvage the situation. It's a difficult and emotionally charged meeting, but they face it with determination and honesty. As they exit the meeting room, they feel the weight of the world on their shoulders. They know they have a long road ahead, filled with challenges and tough decisions, but they also know that they're in this together, and with their collective strength, they can steer Carrington Corp back on track. Chapter 38, Unraveling Secrets. The following day, Laura gets a call from Stanley, the CFO of Carrington Corp. His voice is a mixture of apprehension and urgency as he relays the latest discovery. "Laura," he starts, his words slow and deliberate, "we have found some discrepancies in the previous financial statements. It seems that we've been bleeding funds more than we initially thought." The news hits Laura like a punch in the gut. Her heart rate picks up as she grips the phone tighter, her fingers turning white. "How much more are we talking about here, Stanley?" she asks, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. She can hear Stanley sigh on the other end of the call, and she knows the answer isn't good. In the meantime, Alex and Eliza, having heard about the call, enter Laura's office. They find her staring blankly at the screen, her usual vibrant demeanor replaced with a grimace. "What did Stanley say?" Alex inquires, a sense of dread washing over him. Eliza, standing beside him, crosses her arms over her chest, her worry mirrored in her brother's eyes. Laura swivels in her chair to face them, her expression grave. "There are discrepancies in our financial statements," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. She watches as the information sinks in, both Alex and Eliza visibly paling at the news. "We need to get to the bottom of this," Eliza declares, her voice steely with determination. Alex, too, straightens up, resolve replacing his initial shock. "We'll conduct a full audit," he says, his voice echoing his sister's resolve. True to their word, they get to work immediately. They assemble a team of auditors and comb through every transaction, every contract, every single detail in the financial statements. It's a tedious process, but they're not willing to leave any stone unturned. Every discrepancy needs to be identified and corrected. The future of Carrington Corp depends on it. Late into the night, as they pore over the documents, they discover the shocking truth. It's not just a few discrepancies. It's a major financial fraud. The previous CFO had been manipulating the numbers to make the company seem more profitable than it was. The siblings are dumbfounded. The deception runs much deeper than they could have ever imagined. Their father's trusted advisor had betrayed them. As the sun rises on a new day, they're not just dealing with a company on the verge of bankruptcy. They're now also dealing with a criminal investigation. The road to recovery just got a whole lot bumpier. Chapter 39. Betrayal. The news of the betrayal hits them hard. Laura sits in the stillness of her office, her fingers curled into tight fists as she stares blankly at the sea of papers sprawled across her desk. Each document is a testament to the treachery that has seeped into Carrington Corp. This is unbelievable, she murmurs to herself, her voice echoing through the silence. Alex walks into her office then, a fresh cup of coffee in hand. He looks just as tired as Laura feels, the circles under his eyes prominent. "I've spoken with the legal team," he says, placing the cup on her desk. "They're ready to take this to the police. We're filing charges against him." His voice is hard, his anger evident. Laura picks up the cup of coffee, its warmth seeping into her fingers. She takes a small sip, the bitter taste matching her mood. Did we trust the wrong people, Alex?" she asks, her voice barely above a whisper. She doesn't look at him, instead staring at the black liquid in her cup. Alex sighs, running a hand through his hair. "It seems so, Laura," he replies. "But we couldn't have known this. This was meticulously planned. It wasn't our fault." He looks at his sister, worry etched in his features. Meanwhile, Eliza storms into the conference room where Stanley is seated, his fingers drumming nervously on the polished oak table. "Stanley," she starts, her tone harsh. "How did this happen? How did he manage to deceive us all?" The older man looks up at her, his gaze filled with regret. Stanley swallows hard before replying. "He was very clever, Eliza. He manipulated the numbers in such a way that it looked legitimate to anyone who didn't know what to look for." His words hang heavy in the room, a bitter testament to their previous CFO's betrayal. In the ensuing days, the police get involved, and the office becomes a site for the investigation as officers and auditors walk around searching for evidence. It's a whirlwind of activity, a stark contrast to the usual tranquility of the place. The Carrington siblings work closely with the investigators, providing all the needed information and documents. They have a long road ahead of them, filled with legal battles and financial hurdles, yet they remain undeterred, their determination unwavering. They're not just fighting for their company, but for their father's legacy. Their resolve hardens with each passing day, the betrayal fueling their fight. They are united in this crisis, their bond strengthening in the face of adversity. As they confront the betrayal, they know they can depend on each other, their collective strength, their biggest asset in this tumultuous journey. It's a test of their resilience, and they're determined to overcome it, no matter the cost. Chapter 40. The Investigation. The air of Carrington Corp has changed, a tension pervading every corner of the building. It's an unease that buzzes beneath the surface, electrifying every conversation, every exchange. Workers whisper in hushed tones, casting anxious glances towards Laura's office, where officers shuffle in and out. The once tranquil atmosphere of productivity is replaced by an undercurrent of nervous anticipation. Every email, every document is scrutinized for evidence. Laura and Alex sit at the heart of it all, their usual business-like demeanor replaced with a grim determination. Inside her office, Laura is engaged in a deep conversation with Officer Daniels, a seasoned investigator with sharp eyes that miss nothing. "We've collected all the necessary documents," Laura assures him, pointing to the neat stacks of files on her desk. The coffee she usually enjoys now sits untouched, the aroma mixing with the faint scent of the officer's cologne. Good, we'll need to go through everything thoroughly, Daniels replies, his gaze sweeping over the files. His fingers drum on the desk, a rhythm to his thoughts. Any idea who else might be involved, or is it just your former CFO? Alex, leaning against a bookshelf, jumps in at this point. As far as we know, it was just him. He was very cunning, manipulated us all. His voice is filled with anger, his fists clenching unconsciously at his sides. His eyes harden as he speaks about the betrayal, a sharp contrast to his usual jovial demeanor. Back in the conference room, Stanley and Eliza hold their own meeting. This is going to hit our stock hard, Eliza, Stanley warns, his face etched with worry. He's looking at the company's current financial reports, the figures a stark reminder of the damage that's been inflicted. Eliza nods, her eyes equally grave. I know, Stanley, but we have to face it head on. We can't let him ruin Carrington Corp., she replies, her voice firm despite the uncertainty of their situation. She's always been a fighter, and this crisis only hardens her resolve. As the investigation progresses, Laura, Alex, and Eliza work tirelessly, collaborating with the police and their legal team. They spend long hours digging through financial records, searching for every scrap of information that can aid their cause. Each day ends with them exhausted, but their resolve never wavers. They are committed to revealing the full extent of the deceit and to seeking justice. While the days are filled with frantic activity, the nights are heavy with worry. Each of the Carrington siblings struggles with the implications of the betrayal in their own way, but through it all, their bond strengthens, their shared struggle becoming a beacon of hope in the storm that's hit their lives. They are a team united in their pursuit of justice, and that's a strength no betrayal can diminish. Chapter 41. The First Hearing. The sun is just beginning to break over the city skyline as Laura Carrington steps out of her car, her heels clicking rhythmically on the asphalt. The city is still waking up, the streets filled with a sense of calm that belies the chaos that awaits her inside the courthouse. The imposing building looms ahead, an austere reminder of the ordeal to come. As Laura, Alex, and Eliza approach the entrance, they're met with a flurry of activity. Reporters clamor for a statement, their cameras flashing and microphones thrust forward. Questions echo around them, words jumbled together in a cacophony of noise. Laura's heart thuds against her ribcage, the reality of their situation sinking in with every step. Miss Carrington, do you have any comments about today's hearing? One reporter manages to shout above the rest. His voice cuts through the noise, reaching Laura clearly. She turns to him, her eyes hard. No comment, she responds tersely, forcing herself to maintain her composure. This isn't just about her, it's about Carrington Corp., the legacy her father built, and all the employees who depend on them. She straightens her back, lifting her chin high as they walk past the reporters and into the courthouse. Inside, they find their attorney, a sharp-minded woman named Angela Reed. She's flipping through a thick folder filled with documents, her eyes scanning each page quickly. I've gone through everything. It's not going to be easy, but we have a strong case, she tells them, her tone steady and reassuring. Alex nods in response, squeezing Laura's hand in a gesture of solidarity. As they're led into the courtroom, the magnitude of the situation hits them full force. The grandeur of the room, with its high ceiling and austere wood paneling, is humbling. The judge's bench, elevated at the front, seems distant and unapproachable. Rows of seats for observers fill the back of the room, a smattering of journalists already occupying some. They take their places at the defendant's table, their lawyer laying out her notes and adjusting her glasses. The proceedings begin with a firm bang of the gavel, the judge's voice commanding attention. As accusations are leveled, rebuttals made, and arguments presented, they each hold their breath, aware that their every reaction is being observed, noted, and possibly misconstrued. They rely on Angela's expert navigation of the legal labyrinth, trusting in her ability to bring the truth to light. When the first hearing ends, they exit the courthouse feeling a strange mix of relief and anticipation. The process has only just begun, and they know they're in for a long, arduous fight. But as they stand there under the shadow of the courthouse and the scrutiny of the public, they're united, ready to face whatever comes their way. We'll get through this, Laura says. meeting the eyes of her siblings. Her voice is steady, her resolve clear. She may be weary, but she's far from defeated. They're the Carringtons. They've faced adversity before, and they're prepared to do so again as many times as it takes to ensure justice is served. Chapter 42. In the Eye of the Storm. The aftermath of the first hearing is a whirlwind of activity. Phone calls, emails, and messages come in an unceasing stream, their collective noise drowning out any sense of calm. The press is relentless, their headlines bold and sensationalist, spinning stories out of half-truths and speculation. Carrington Corp's stock fluctuates, an electronic embodiment of the public's wavering trust in the company. Each move they make, every word they say, is under the scrutiny of the world, adding to the weight of their situation. Back in their office, Laura, Alex, and Eliza gather around the conference table, their gazes falling on the large TV screen, broadcasting the news. The anchor is discussing their case, a picture of the courthouse accompanying her report. Their faces reflect the strain of the day, their jaws set and eyes hardened, the only outward signs of the storm raging within them. "Look at this," Alex says, his voice filled with frustration as he points at the screen. "They've got it all wrong. We're being painted as villains when we're the victims here." Eliza nods, her hand clenching around a coffee mug. "The media doesn't care about the truth, Alex," she states, her tone bitter. "They care about selling a story." Laura, sitting at the head of the table, flips through a stack of papers. "These are the latest financial reports, and the figures aren't encouraging. We need to focus on what we can control," she reminds them, her voice steady. "Our primary concern has to be the company, its employees, and our shareholders." A silence falls over them as they absorb her words. The reality of their predicament is hard to stomach, but they know she's right. The only way to weather this storm is to stand together, to stay focused on what matters most. Angela joins them then, a briefcase in hand. "We've been working on a strategy," she starts, pulling out a series of documents. "The public opinion may be against us now, but we can turn this around." They lean in, listening intently as she outlines their plan. It's a mix of legal maneuvers, media outreach, and internal operations. A multifaceted approach designed to tackle their crisis from all angles. They discuss, argue, and eventually agree on a course of action. It's a long road ahead, but they're prepared to walk it together. By the time they wrap up their meeting, night has fallen. The city is bathed in an artificial glow, the bright lights a stark contrast to the darkness encroaching upon them. As they part ways, an unspoken understanding hangs in the air. The storm is far from over, but they're in the eye now, focused, determined, and united. "Remember, we're Carringtons," Laura says as they leave, her voice echoing in the empty room. "We've faced challenges before, and we've always come out stronger. We will this time too." Her words hang in the air, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos as the Carrington siblings step out into the night, ready to face another day. Chapter 43. Building Bridges. Morning comes too soon, bringing with it the promise of yet another hectic day. In the Carrington office, staff members move with a new sense of purpose, their conversations hushed and serious. Coffee is brewed stronger. Conversations are held with greater urgency, and behind every decision is an underlying current of tension. The rhythm of the office has changed, keeping time with the pressing needs of their crisis. Laura walks into her office early, the low morning light casting long shadows on the floor. She takes a moment to gaze out of the massive window that overlooks the city. It's a view that always inspires awe, the skyline a testament to human innovation and perseverance. It's a view she's fought hard to earn, a reminder of the empire they've built. Today it's also a reminder of what they stand to lose. Her assistant, Melissa, walks in, balancing a tray of coffee and a stack of morning reports. She's a young woman in her mid-20s, fiercely intelligent and dedicated, her usual cheeriness dimmed by the current situation. "The press are camped outside again," she comments, setting down the tray on Laura's desk. Laura sips her coffee, her gaze not leaving the window. "They're like vultures waiting for a piece of Carrington Corp," she muses aloud, her tone dry. She turns towards Melissa, her expression focused. "Set up a meeting with the department heads for 10, and get our PR team on the line. I want to brainstorm ideas on how to handle this media circus." Throughout the day, Laura works relentlessly. She speaks with the company's lawyers, consults with the financial department, and strategizes with the public relations team. Her resolve is unwavering, her spirit indomitable. Amidst the whispers and murmurs that float around the office, one sentiment stands clear. If anyone can guide Carrington Corp through this storm, it's Laura Carrington. As the sun dips low, coloring the sky with hues of orange and red, Laura calls it a day. The office is nearly empty, the remaining staff wrapping up their work. Just as she's about to leave, her phone rings. The display flashes, unknown number. She hesitates, then picks it up. "Miss Carrington," a familiar voice greets her, its tone cordial. It's the CEO of a rival company, a person she's sparred with in boardrooms and business meetings. "What can I do for you?" Laura asks, her tone guarded. "We're not friends, Carrington," the CEO says, his voice calm. "But no one deserves what you're going through. We might be competitors, but we're also part of the same industry, and we need to stick together." For a moment, Laura's taken aback. Then she smiles, a hint of genuine warmth breaking through her professional facade. "I appreciate the sentiment," she replies, a note of gratitude in her voice. She realizes then that in the face of adversity, bridges can be built even between the unlikeliest of allies. It's a small victory, but a significant one, and in times like these, she knows every small victory counts. Chapter 44, From Foes to Allies. A new day dawns over the city, the sun casting long, hazy rays that glimmer against the steel and glass of the sprawling metropolis. Inside Carrington Corp, the air is tinged with a newfound sense of anticipation, a faint but discernible shift in the collective mood. Among the flurry of activity, whispers of the unexpected phone call from the rival CEO have begun to circulate, spurring a glimmer of hope among the worried staff. Laura, who's been the first one in the office and the last one to leave since the crisis hit, is at her desk again, navigating through a series of back-to-back meetings. Her focus is unwavering, and despite the stress, she exudes a calm and determined air that is infectious. The apprehension that once held the office in a tight grip is gradually being replaced by a cautious sense of optimism. In the middle of her morning briefing, Laura's phone buzzes with an incoming call. Seeing the familiar name on the screen, she promptly excuses herself and takes the call in the privacy of her office. "Good morning, Laura," comes the cordial greeting from the rival CEO, Richard Langley. "Good morning, Richard," Laura responds, her tone professional but warm. Their prior adversarial encounters seem distant now, eclipsed by the current situation. "What can I do for you today?" Langley's tone is serious as he proceeds. "Laura, I've spoken with some other industry leaders. We're thinking of making a joint statement of support for Carrington Corp." Laura is momentarily stunned. It's an unexpected gesture, one that goes beyond standard business rivalries and speaks to the value of unity in the face of crisis. "That would be incredibly helpful, Richard," she replies, her gratitude evident. "I can't express how much I appreciate this." The rest of the day unfolds with a renewed sense of purpose. News of the upcoming joint statement sparks a flurry of activity. Laura's meetings are interspersed with calls to and from other industry leaders. Words of encouragement and offers of support pour in, each one bolstering her resolve to steer Carrington Corp through the storm. As evening falls and the office gradually empties, Laura finally has a moment to herself. She stands by her window, the cityscape sprawling out beneath her. She reflects on the day's developments, the support from her rivals, and the collective determination of her team. Despite the crisis, there's a sense of unity and mutual respect that she's never experienced before. She then receives a message from Richard confirming the joint statement's release the next morning. As she reads it, Laura feels a glimmer of hope ignite in her chest. In the midst of their adversity, they've not only weathered the storm, but also built unlikely alliances. Tomorrow will be a pivotal day, but for the first time in weeks, Laura looks forward to it with renewed optimism. The journey isn't over, but Laura Carrington knows she's no longer walking it alone. Chapter 45, Unity in Crisis. The sun casts its first golden rays over the city, marking the dawn of a day that could define the future of Carrington Corp. Within the confines of the office, hushed voices echo through the corridors as employees filter in, their faces marked by cautious anticipation. News of the joint statement, a beacon of unity in the industry, has circulated, invigorating the atmosphere with a sense of hope that has been sorely missing. In her office, Laura Carrington sits at her desk, her fingers drumming lightly against the smooth wood. The tangible shift in the office mood is mirrored in her own emotions. The apprehension of the previous weeks, a constant gnawing companion, has given way to a guarded optimism, its glow brightening the edges of her determined demeanor. Laura's phone chimes, disrupting her thoughts. It's a message from her assistant, Jamie. "The press is ready, Laura. They're waiting for the joint statement." With a deep breath, Laura picks up her phone and dials Richard Langley's number. As the phone rings, she recalls the unlikely alliance they formed, a testament to the unity the crisis has spurred. "Richard," Laura begins, her voice firm, "are we ready to release the statement?" On the other end of the line, Richard responds, "We're ready, Laura. I've got my PR team on standby. We'll release the statement in sync with you." Laura can't help but marvel at the unexpected camaraderie. Once rivals, now they are standing together in the face of crisis, their unity an unexpected silver lining. "Thank you, Richard," she says, her gratitude resonating in her voice. "This means more than I can express." With the call ended, Laura signals Jamie to organize the press release. As the announcement spreads, the news channels light up with headlines about the joint statement. Analysts, journalists, and industry insiders alike weigh in, their dialogue dominated by speculation and praise for the show of solidarity in the face of crisis. In the office, the mood lifts further. Whispers of hope thread through the hum of activity, buoying spirits and sparking a sense of renewed purpose. Laura finds herself in the middle of it all, her determination renewed, her resolve hardened. As the day draws to a close, the buzz of activity recedes, leaving behind a sense of accomplishment. Laura, alone in her office, looks out over the city lights, reflecting on the day. The path ahead remains uncertain, but today they've made significant strides. They've demonstrated unity and resilience, defying the crisis and paving the way for a brighter future. With a newfound sense of hope, Laura leaves the office, the day's successes following her like a promising shadow. The next chapter of Carrington Corp's story is yet to be written, but today they've managed to turn the page. Chapter 46, A Light on the Horizon. It's a typical morning at Carrington Corp, but an air of optimism is palpable, a stark contrast to the foreboding atmosphere that loomed before. The employees greet each other with smiles and nod in shared understanding, their spirits uplifted by the recent announcement. Their unity has begun to shape the narrative around their situation, replacing the fear of collapse with a sense of hope. In her office, Laura Carrington pores over the analytics reports, her brows furrowed in concentration. The joint statement with Langley Corp has made a significant positive impact, evident in the surge of supportive responses from stakeholders and the general public alike. This was a gamble that has paid off, a sign that they can weather the storm together. Her assistant Jamie knocks on the door and pokes her head in, a smile playing on her lips. "Laura, you won't believe it. The social media responses are through the roof." Laura, unable to contain her curiosity, asks Jamie, "What are they saying? Share some of the feedback with me." Jamie grins and begins to read off comments from her screen. One user says, "It's inspiring to see two rivals come together for the greater good." Another says, "This joint statement is the epitome of corporate responsibility," and there's plenty more where that came from. This flood of positive sentiment fuels Laura's determination even further. However, she's aware that this initial enthusiasm must translate into tangible action if they are to make any real progress. "Keep monitoring the responses, Jamie, and let's prepare for our next steps. This goodwill is encouraging, but we need to build on it," Laura instructs. As the day progresses, Laura initiates several key meetings with her team, brainstorming strategies to leverage the positive reception. They discuss outreach programs, CSR initiatives, and future partnerships, each suggestion building on the momentum generated by their unity. The discussions are marked by an enthusiastic exchange of ideas, a testament to the renewed morale in the team. As the sun begins to set, Laura sits back in her chair, exhaustion mingling with satisfaction. Today has been one of the most productive days at Carrington Corp in weeks. They've successfully spun the narrative in their favor, invigorating their stakeholders and, more importantly, their own team. As Laura leaves the office, she can't help but notice the shift in energy. The corridors once echoed with anxiety, but now they're filled with a renewed sense of purpose. This journey is far from over, but for the first time in weeks, there's a light on the horizon. And it's a light they've kindled together, a beacon that promises brighter days ahead. Chapter 47. Winds of change over at Langley Corp. The positive response to their joint statement with Carrington Corp. is having a similar uplifting effect. The halls of the colossal corporate building echo with lively conversations, staff sharing hopeful exchanges over steaming cups of coffee. A transformative energy seems to have swept through the offices, shifting the company's atmosphere from gloom to promise. At the helm of this transformation, James Langley sits at his desk, scrolling through the waves of support flooding their social media channels. His eyes skim over the glowing words of encouragement, the praises for their unified front. "This is quite an unexpected turn," he murmurs to himself, a slight smile curving his lips. His assistant Rebecca, an intelligent woman with an uncanny knack for reading the corporate atmosphere, stands at the door of his office. She knocks lightly, calling his attention. "James, may I share something with you?" she asks, her voice filled with excitement. "Certainly, Rebecca. What's on your mind?" he replies, curious to hear her perspective. "It's just, I've never seen the staff so optimistic. This unity with Carrington Corp. is doing more than just saving the company, it's rejuvenating the entire team," Rebecca shares earnestly. She had been with Langley Corp. through thick and thin and understood the dynamics better than anyone. James nods, appreciating her insight. "I see it too, Rebecca. It's fascinating how adversity can sometimes bring out the best in us, isn't it? Let's not let this energy go to waste. Schedule a meeting with the management team. We need to strategize on harnessing this positive atmosphere for the road ahead," he instructs, his tone assertive yet imbued with newfound enthusiasm. For the rest of the day, James is engaged in back-to-back meetings with various department heads. They discuss new ideas and strategies, laying the groundwork to leverage the current positive sentiment for the long-term benefit of Langley Corp. The conversation is lively, ideas bouncing off the conference room walls with kinetic energy. As the workday draws to a close, James reflects on the day's progress. For the first time in weeks, the future doesn't seem as bleak. They're still navigating through a storm, but now they have a lighthouse guiding them, the unity they found with Carrington Corp. A sense of accomplishment fills James, but he knows this is just the start of their journey to redemption. Looking out of his office window at the sprawling cityscape, James feels the winds of change blowing. With each gust, they carry away the uncertainty that once clouded Langley Corp., replacing it with a sense of anticipation for the challenges and triumphs that lie ahead. Change is afoot, and it's a change they're ready to embrace. Chapter 48. Tides Turning. Across town, in the imposing Carrington Corp. headquarters, a similar buzz of anticipation reverberates through the massive building. Employees are swapping eager glances and hopeful whispers, their spirits visibly buoyed by the latest developments. The prospect of a partnership with Langley Corp. has not just salvaged their reputation, but also reignited a flame of hope that had been diminishing in the recent past. Sitting in her office, meticulously scanning through the reports from various departments, Samantha Carrington can't help but share the staff's optimism. She savors each positive word, each expression of gratitude from their clients, and feels a surge of pride. She whispers to herself, "We've done it. We're turning the tide." Her heart flutters with a strange mix of relief and exhilaration. At that moment, her assistant Lucas, a bright young man with a knack for anticipating Samantha's needs, knocks on the door. "Miss Carrington, there's something I think you'll want to see," he says, offering her a printout. His face is lit up with an infectious grin, signaling that the news is good. "What is it, Lucas?" Samantha queries, curiosity piquing as she accepts the paper from him. "It's the preliminary feedback from our customers on the alliance with Langley Corp. The responses are overwhelmingly positive. Look at this one." He points to a comment. "They're calling it a promising shift in the industry dynamics," Lucas reads out loud, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. She scans the feedback, her eyes widening in delight. "This is excellent news, Lucas. The public support means a lot. I want these feedbacks to be shared with the entire team. I believe it would serve as a great motivation," she instructs, handing back the paper. With Lucas off to spread the news, Samantha immerses herself in a fresh wave of strategic planning. She sits with her team leaders, brainstorming ways to capitalize on their newly gained momentum, to turn their dream of industry transformation into reality. The room buzzes with fervent exchanges, innovative ideas taking shape amidst lively discussions. As the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of twilight, Samantha finds herself standing by her office window. She gazes at the cityscape, the flickering lights mirroring the spark of hope in her heart. The tide indeed is turning in their favor. Despite the long day, she feels energized, fueled by the promise of a brighter future. There's a long way to go, she knows, but the journey doesn't seem as daunting anymore. Not when they are steering the course together with Langley Corp. In the quiet of her office, Samantha smiles to herself. It's a smile of confidence, of anticipation for what's to come. As the night embraces the city, she can't shake off a feeling. Tomorrow will be a new day, a fresh start, and they're more than ready for it. Chapter 49. The Dawn of a New Era. The first rays of dawn spill through the panoramic glass windows of Langley Corp's boardroom, casting a soft golden light on the faces of the executives. They are gathered around a massive teak table, heads bent over documents, talking in hushed whispers. An air of cautious optimism lingers in the room. The potential alliance with Carrington Corp is not just the start of a new chapter, it's the dawn of a new era. James Langley, CEO, a man known for his strategic acumen and a knack for turning challenges into opportunities, breaks away from his documents. He looks at his team, his gaze steady and sure. His voice breaks the quiet hum of the room. I believe this is an unprecedented opportunity for both our organizations, but we must tread carefully. Martha Jensen, Langley's long-serving CFO and a woman of immense financial wisdom, leans back in her chair. Her eyes, often perceived as cold and calculating, are alight with anticipation. "I concur, James," she says, her voice steady. "This partnership will not just benefit us financially, but also help us explore areas of the industry we have yet to venture into." James nods in agreement, his gaze shifting to William Harper, the VP of Operations. William, with his years of experience managing the vast operations of Langley Corp, adds, "The unification of our operations can open up economies of scale and scope that were previously unreachable." His fingers tap rhythmically against the stack of documents in front of him, a sign of the excitement he struggles to contain. "Yes, we must be careful, but we must also be ready to embrace change," adds Elaine Thompson, the head of HR, her voice soft but firm. Known for her empathetic approach and leadership skills, she has an uncanny ability to bring a human perspective to the often mechanical world of corporate decision-making. Throughout the discussion, James listens attentively, appreciating the candor and thoughtfulness his team exhibits. Their optimism mirrors his. Their apprehensions mirror his caution. He takes a moment to reply, choosing his words carefully. "We are on the brink of something incredible. Our approach should be focused, yet flexible. Let's keep our teams informed and involved. This alliance will affect every single person in this company, and it's our responsibility to ensure it's a change for the better." As the day unfurls, so does the discussion, intensifying, mellowing, and taking different turns. They debate, deliberate, agree, and disagree. But at the core of it all, they are unified by a shared vision, a brighter future for Langley Corp. By the time dusk descends, they've carved a preliminary path, a blueprint of sorts for the alliance. It's a long road ahead, fraught with challenges and uncertainty. But as the executives look around the room, they see reflected in each other's eyes the same spark of determination. It's a new era, a new dawn, and they're ready to face it head on. Chapter 50. Beyond the Horizon. Days turn into weeks. The sun rises and sets, and the seasons subtly change their hue. The anticipation of the alliance between Langley Corp and Carrington Corp is like a living, breathing entity, affecting everyone from the boardrooms to the smallest cubicles. In the heart of the Langley Corp's bustling operations department, the team leaders huddle together, discussing strategies to streamline the upcoming integration. It's an atmosphere buzzing with an amalgamation of hope, tension, and a hint of uncertainty. New supply chains, new systems, new training. Mark Burton, one of the team leaders, lists the changes on his fingers, his tone a mix of excitement and apprehension. "There's a lot we have to adapt to, and fast." Ellie Fernandez, another team leader known for her resilience and positive outlook, nudges Mark lightly, giving him a comforting smile. "But think about the opportunities, Mark. The exposure, the chance to work on a scale we've never encountered before. It's going to be a phenomenal learning experience. Their banter ripples through the huddled group, lightening the mood, opening the door for each of them to voice their thoughts and fears. They speak candidly, a collective sigh of relief filling the room as they realize they're not alone in their feelings. They discuss possible solutions, bonding over shared goals and the hope for a prosperous future. Meanwhile, in the labyrinthine corridors of the Carrington Corps, there's a similar air of anticipation. Employees huddle in groups, discussing the potential impact of the alliance on their roles, their futures. Sophia Jones, a seasoned project manager, listens to her colleagues' apprehensions with a sense of calm. She's seen the company through thick and thin, and she's certain they'll navigate these changes just as they have others. Change is the only constant. She offers, her voice imbued with wisdom and reassurance. We've adapted before, we'll do it again. And remember, this alliance could usher in opportunities we've only dreamed of. And so, across the city in two massive corporate buildings, a similar dialogue unfolds. People discuss, debate, express their hopes and voice their fears. The upcoming alliance brings a sense of unity, a sense of shared destiny. And through it all, there's an undercurrent of excitement, a sense of anticipation for what lies beyond the horizon. Chapter 51, Alliance Assembled. The day of the Grand Alliance announcement finally arrives, bringing with it a wave of anticipation that courses through the veins of both Langley Corp and Carrington Corp. The sun rises over the city, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink as if celebrating the dawn of a new era. In the largest convention center in the city, a gargantuan stage is set, decked out in the royal blues and sharp silvers of both companies. Hundreds of employees, stakeholders, and members of the press are gathered, their chatter creating a vibrant symphony of voices under the massive glass dome. The atmosphere is electric, crackling with the energy of the monumental moment about to unfold. Alex Carrington and Elizabeth Langley, James's daughter, stand backstage watching the gathering crowd through a slit in the heavy velvet curtains. The sight of so many people, their livelihoods intertwined with the success of this alliance, is overwhelming but also inspiring. Alex turns to Elizabeth, a thoughtful smile tugging at his lips. This alliance is more than just a business merger, Liz. It's the merging of hopes, dreams, and destinies, and to think we've been given the honor to steer it. Elizabeth's eyes meet Alex's, her own smile mirroring his. Yes, we've got a tremendous responsibility, Alex, but I have faith in our teams. In us. Together we can navigate this ship towards a prosperous future. Their words resonate with the gravity of the situation. A silent pact of mutual respect and commitment forming between them. The soft hum of their shared vision amplifies, dwarfing the din of the excited crowd beyond the curtain. With a final deep breath, they step onto the stage, greeted by a deafening applause. They stand shoulder to shoulder, looking out at the sea of expectant faces. The air seems to hold its breath as Alex begins to speak, the sound system carrying his words to every corner of the room. Today marks a historic moment, not just for Langley and Carrington corporations, but for each and every one of us gathered here. This alliance is not just about numbers and growth, but about nurturing dreams, fostering innovation, and creating a better future for all. Together we are stronger. As his words reverberate around the room, a sense of shared destiny sweeps through the crowd. A murmur of agreement rises, followed by another round of applause. The moment of unease, of uncertainty, gives way to unity and collective strength. The day ends with the signing of the official documents, the flash of cameras capturing the historic handshake between James and Alex. It's the beginning of a new era, the dawn of a shared journey. It is the promise of a better, stronger future that the Grand Alliance of Langley Corp and Carrington Corp aspires to create. And as the city's skyline fades into the twilight, the story of Elizabeth Langley, Alex Carrington, and their monumental alliance comes to a close. Their tale, one of resilience, ambition, and collaboration, will echo in the corridors of their corporations and beyond, inspiring countless others to dare to dream, to adapt, and above all, to persevere.